and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company?
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Eddie, I love it. City of Indianapolis, people of Indianapolis, I love it. And
what
by the
do
way,
you love?
You know, I just love life, Eddie. First off, and I don't know how this happened. It certainly was at the fault of no one here, but we have, I think most people know by now, we have a couple of chipmunks that run the computer system here, right? Occasionally they take a smoke break. We've caught them taking a smoke break from time to time over the years. And there's one chipmunk that occasionally goes out and he gets into more than just
the rebel child.
That's right. He's the rebel child chipmunk. And he occasionally goes jump roping with a couple of wires and crosses them. And I was just having a conversation with a cardiologist, and a lot of times through the studio, I'll patch it through this way, and we'll make a phone call. And basically the board that I use works as anyway, one of the chipmunks got it crossed up and decided that I needed to intercept what was happening on the mothership. So my apologies if my voice went over those airwaves. It was not intentional, I promise. But I love this time of year. And I really do think, and this is a strange epiphany, and there's plenty to get to in the NFL, which we will over the course of today, because it's going to be, and we know it's going to be a very busy day, probably, again, just in chasing things and analyzing some of the stories that have happened. I believe personally, this is strictly a gut instinct, and my gut's a little bigger than it once was. But I believe personally that sometime today, between now and when you hear my voice one day from now, I think in the next 24 hours, we will hear or see news that the Colts have come to an agreement with Daniel Jones. That is my anticipation. It's not to say that's fact. That's not to say that it is but I would be shocked if it did not turn out to happen that way. But we shall see what does unfold. But you will hear me say this plenty of times between now and the next month. And that is this observation. And I don't think I'm alone in this. But we are now, gosh, I guess it will be, 1 month from, or 3 weeks from, I'd have to look at my quick math, from last night, that we will all be watching One Shining Moment. And I always say that One Shining Moment, just the song itself and then the video that eclipses and follows it and everything else, it always feels like melancholic. Because when I watch One Shining Moment, first off, you see highlights of like the colorful coach or the creative, student section with a funny sign, or a great shot that took place for a huge upset in the first or second game of the opening Thursday of the NCAA tournament. And when you're watching it on One Shining Moment, you think to yourself, that feels like a lifetime ago. And yet it was 2 weeks ago, right? And when I hear this music, Eddie, and maybe I'm the only one. But when I hear this song and I'm watching it, it always reminds me of tournaments past. And that music reminds me of the magic of March, of racing home from school to see which games are just wrapping up, or sitting in my 7th grade science class when they rolled in the television on wheels to watch Indiana getting, shocked by Cleveland State, whatever it might be. And then you think about like family members that were there back then and whatever else. And it's this, I cannot be alone. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm weird. But my point being, there is this reflection about March and March Madness that happens to me every year, nostalgically and emotionally speaking, that a small part of it is sad, but most of it is triumphant because you're getting ready to go in through this journey again. And I love it. The weather's starting to break. You feel like spring break. You know that spring's around the corner, which means the month of May, all of it. This is the entryway. This is the gateway. And it begins right now, because we are now into the point of conference tournament championships and getting set for Selection Sunday and finding out where everybody's going and all of that. And Last night, I went to the semifinals of the Horizon League. Saw a great game between Robert Morris and Detroit Mercy. Detroit Mercy is a great story because this is a program that was at the bottom of the barrel in Division I college basketball just a couple of years ago, and now here they are. They will play tonight for their ticket to be punched into the NCAA tournament, but in order to do so, of course, they have to get past Wright State, who last night hit the century mark and scored a ton of points at the Carteva Coliseum. But being at the Coliseum, and again, all of it, it all takes me back to just the magic of March and March Madness. And all of that, I'm here for it. So I'm excited for it, and we will talk plenty about it over the course of today. As a matter of fact, to start out the show, joining us on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line, he is with the Big Ten Network as they get set to get underway because everything getting underway and starting tonight for the Big Ten tournament. Oregon and Maryland and then Northwestern and Penn State are the openers, and Dave Revson joining us now to talk about that and more. Dave, happy March to you.
Oh, man, so excited, Jake. For us, this is kind of our Super Bowl, as I think you know. These are the biggest live events that we have on our air every year. Starting tomorrow night is the first set of games for us, and then Thursday and Friday all day. So just get so excited about it, and I think it's going to be an amazing tournament this year. The quality at the top of this league is kind of staggering. There's some really good teams.
I'll tell you what, Dave, when you think about the fact that Purdue, who was kind of, virtually everyone, I don't think anybody had Purdue any lower than, say, the top 5 to begin the college basketball season, yet they're the 7th seed in the Big Ten tournament, which is amazing to think about. I want to get to that in a second. By the way, Oregon, Maryland, Northwestern, Penn State, those are the opening games, those on Peacock, but then everything gets set for the Big Ten Network tomorrow. As a matter of fact, Peacock is well involved, but Big Ten Network will have all of the coverage before and after games. Dave, let's begin with this. When you look at this conference and the vast nature of it, we've talked a little bit about this, but for the teams that will represent the Big Ten in the NCAA tournament, is there a style of play that if you've gone through the rigors of the Big Ten that you have not yet seen? How many different kind of styles of play do you think have been represented over the course of the year? And I guess the reason I'm asking that is to say, if you're coming out of the Big Ten, what kind of team might give you fits in March because it looks new to you?
Well, I think it just depends on the team, but kind of to your broader point, Jake, the differences in style. I mean, I do think we always kind of paint with a broad brush, and the Big Ten was physical and was a big man dominated league and all that. I mean, there were different styles for sure, but I mean, you look at teams that love to get up and down the court, and we have a number of those. Michigan, Wisconsin, which I think is crazy given their history, but they have completely changed the way that they play. Nebraska shoots a ton of threes as well. IU shoots a ton of threes. You got, 4 teams that more than half their shots come from behind the arc. But then you have teams that play much more methodical styles. I mean, Minnesota attempts the fewest shots per game of any power conference team, and Iowa's right behind them. Minnesota's going to play zone, so you see some of that. You've got teams that press, and in Oregon plays some zone as well. So again, it runs the gamut in terms of the styles of play. I don't think there's anything you won't have seen because of the far-flung nature of the league. Now, whether or not you're good at it is another question, and so that to me is an issue with some of our teams where you kind of see, this is something that gives this team issues, right? I don't think Illinois does a great job of containing quick guards, and that makes me worry a little bit about them, just to pick an example of an elite team that I think has an area that concerns me. So, but you know kind of where you stand, I think, coming out of the Big Ten. You know what you need to work on because everything has been represented in terms of styles of play and in terms of figuring out what are we good at and what do we need to work on.
What do you think is Dave Rebson's my guest from the Big Ten Network. Dave, you obviously are breaking down games on the regular and have throughout the course of the season, and you get the opportunity to talk to guys that know and have coached the game as well as anybody. What's been the narrative that you've heard from them on where Purdue has fallen short, or just on where – fallen short's a weird thing to say, I realize, but you get what I'm saying there. What's been the missing ingredient for Purdue?
Well, it's defense. I mean, I think it's defense on the perimeter in particular. I think the guards have a hard time keeping up with quicker guards, and then they get in rotation, and then they give up easy shots. They don't really have rim protection. So I think it's kind of a combination of factors. But, I mean, it's interesting. Like, you look at this stretch here recently where they've struggled. I believe they are second or third in the nation in offensive efficiency here over the last, whatever it is, 6 games where they've lost 4 of them, or, it's crazy, right? So it's not offense. Like, you have the second or third most efficient offense in the country in that stretch, and you're still under 500. The issue is defense. I mean, I just think it's that clear. We all know what's going on here. Matt knows what's going on here, and he has said, hey, it's on me. That it was on me to get it fixed. It's still on me to get it fixed, and we haven't done it for whatever reason. So I don't think it's any great mystery. I mean, you watch them play. Like, they scored over 90 points against Wisconsin and lost on Saturday. They haven't scored over 90 points and lost a game since 1987. I mean, it's insane.
What's weird, though, Dave,
30 games in a row.
The thing that to me that's perplexing, and let me throw you a theory here, and feel free, and it wouldn't be the first time for you to have to say, Jake, that's a dumb theory, okay? But their perimeter guard, their perimeter play defensively, the personnel is virtually the same as it was a year ago. But what's different is you have Oscar Clough, who, listen, there are a lot of things about Oscar Clough I really, really like, but I feel like the space that he takes, even though it's obviously on the inside and not the perimeter, that it changes the operating areas defensively for some of their guards, and therefore instinctively being aware of where everyone is at the same time has just gone off kilter, and they've never picked that up. And so they don't have their switches and things like that. They're a half a step behind because they're just having to move in different ways than they did a year ago. Now, you tell me if that's the dumbest thing you've ever heard.
I guess I don't know enough to know, right? I mean, I think it's obvious in watching them, and certainly in talking to people, but just in watching them, right? The guards get beat a lot off the dribble. And so then, again, that puts them in weird spots where, to your point, you're switching and you're trying to catch up and you're kind of constantly behind the ball. They weren't a good defensive team last year either. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, that was the issue a season ago, too. It felt like they were going to be able to fix it. Look, I think Jacobson's part of it. Again, I hate to say it, but he's just not the physical presence that they had hoped that he would be. He's just not as strong as he needs to be inside. His base isn't as strong. So I think that's part of it, too. I think they envisioned that he would be a rim protector type. And when I talked to Matt last year about why isn't the defense where you expect it to be, he says, well, Jacobson was going to be our guy. And now we're a year later, and he hasn't really made a difference either. So I don't want to point at one person, whatever. I think it's systemic. I think it's the guards are an issue. And then, so you had like Lance Jones. Obviously you had Edey, but you had Jones. Like, you had guys that were quicker on the perimeter a couple years ago, and you just don't have it. So again, I think it's a function of several. I think it's systemic. I don't think it's one guy. I don't think it's just Oscar. I don't think it's just Fletcher and Braden Smith. I think it's everyone. But it's obvious at this point that that's what it is. And so can you fix it? I just don't know. I want to believe you can, because I think the world of Matt, and I respect the heck out of the way he runs his program. I love the fact they've got 3 seniors who stayed their entire career. I mean, I'm sure you saw this thing that was floating around last week where there's only 20 or 21 players in all of the power conferences who have stayed 4 years at their respective institutions, and basically half of them are in the Big Ten and 3 of them are at Purdue. I respect the heck out of that, and I want them to succeed and to win a national championship. They're preseason number 1, to your point earlier. I just don't see it right now. I'd love to be wrong, but I don't see it.
Dave Rebson, my guest, Big Ten Network, where you can see his coverage and all of their coverage for the Big Ten tournament. All right, Dave, the team in the Big Ten right now we're going to take Michigan out of the equation because they've been outstanding all year, right? But the team that you look at and you say, you know what, kudos to them because they have gelled at the right time and may be clicking on all cylinders more so than any other team right now, that would be who?
Well, I'm not great at answering questions just because I spent the last 20 years asking similar questions to DiNardo, and he can never answer with just one team. So right. I'm gonna take a little bit of his lead here. I'm going to go with two. I'm going to say Michigan State, I think, is really coming together. And I was actually really encouraged in watching them over the weekend, even though they lost to Michigan. I thought they played them toe-to-toe. I think the bigs have really gotten better in Cooper and Kohler. And, again, Cooper's another one of those guys, and Kohler too, who've stayed 4 years, who believed in a system, who developed and turned into better players. So I think their bigs are better, and they're shooting the ball better than they did last year by far. Like last year, the key issue was as good as they were, and they won the league by 3 games last year, the regular season. But when push came to shove, they just didn't have any outside shooters. They're better this year by about 5 percentage points, and their bigs are better. So to me, they're one team. The other is Wisconsin. I'm a little reticent to totally get behind Wisconsin just because I think they have some of the same issues that Purdue does. I don't think they're a great defensive team. But guards win in March, and, man, the combination of guards that they have in Boyd and Blackwell is phenomenal. I think Boyd's incredible. So that to me is two teams. Again, I might lean, if you force me to pick one, I might lean Michigan State. But I really like what Wisconsin's got going too. And again, that doesn't mean obviously I love Michigan. I think Illinois got a chance. I think Nebraska's got a chance. But hey, the two that I feel like are maybe best constructed are those two, aside from Michigan.
If they were to win against the winner of Northwestern Penn State, I'm talking about Indiana, and then force themselves into a matchup with Purdue, does one Big Ten tournament win get Indiana into the big dance?
Well, this is more of a DeCourcy question. In talking to him, like the bubble's terrible, as I'm sure you know, and all these teams just keep losing and losing and losing. So that helps IU if you can make a little noise. The Northwestern Penn State winner does you no good at all. Although Northwestern, oddly, was a quad one road win for people this year. But still, so they're not. If you lose to them, it's not terrible. If you lose to Penn State, it's over. But it's not going to help you. Beating Northwestern isn't going to help you, even though the road game helped people this year. They've got to beat Purdue. And then I don't know. I mean, yeah, you'd have 2 wins over Purdue. Now, Purdue isn't seen, as we've already discussed, isn't seen the same way as they were perceived at the beginning of the year. But it would certainly put Indiana in the discussion, no doubt. If they don't win at least 1 game, it's over. And then if they win 2 games, let's see where it goes.
Dave, lastly, what's your favorite thing about March, just about tournament time, not just the Big Ten tournament, but the NCAA tournament in general? What about the magic of March is most appealing to Dave Rebson?
Well, as you know, I think we're all kind of products of where we came from. And for me, I spent a lot of time traversing the country with Doug Gottlieb calling low and mid-major games. That was kind of our niche, these championship games. I mean, there was one year I think we sent 5 teams to the tournament in 6 days. And so I really love that aspect of it. Like, I love the one-bid leagues and teams getting in. I don't love the huge upset. Like, I think some of these leagues have to rethink what they're doing. The Missouri Valley would be first and foremost. I mean, Belmont, just like, I don't know how you put Belmont in that spot. But I love those leagues. So as much as, covering the Big Ten and in the end, obviously I want a Big Ten team to break through it and win a national championship. Like this week, this time right now, I actually love the low and mid majors because it's kind of where I came from. And it is, I always looked at it as it was such a privilege. Like these kids were going to be on national television one time, maybe in their entire lives. And I had the chance to call that game, and I always put so much into it to make sure that I knew their stories and I understood the significance of High Point and Troy and all these places that you'd never think about until you came to this time of year. So that's my answer. Again, I love the first 2 days of the tournament. To me, those are the 2 best days of the year. But if we're talking about this week, it's a low and mid major.
Great. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I went last night to the Horizon League semifinals at the Coliseum to watch Robert Morris and Detroit Mercy, and it's a back-and-forth game, but it was awesome because, like, every guy on the bench is jumping up and down with every three. I mean, there is something still to be said about, getting away from the big business of it and seeing still the passion and the dream for a lot of guys. But it exists within the Big Ten as well. Big Ten tournament will get underway today, and then Big Ten Network will have games live starting tomorrow. Dave Rebson will be working round the clock on all of it and still manage to squeeze in time for a couple of my dumb questions. Dave, appreciate the time as always. Go White Sox, all right?
All right, my friend, be good. That's a lost cause you've attached yourself to, but I appreciate it.
I'm getting ready to buy my tickets for our single game, and I'm thinking.
Oh, you got to scoop those up. My goodness, I mean, you've got to get those now. What are you? Have they gone on sale yet? What are we waiting for?
I'm set for push alerts. They make their money off me. That's it. Entirely me.
They probably laugh every time they get your order. Does he not know about SeatGeek?
That's true. And then they email me 1,000 times in the offseason. Appreciate it, Dave.
All right, be good, my friend.
Right, Dave Rebson joining us from the Big Ten Network. I love it. I love it. And he mentioned High Point and Troy. One of my favorite things this time of year also is just those schools that literally, and Butler's one of them. I mean, the reality is Butler is this team now, and it's no longer Gonzaga. Gonzaga is now a household name, but it was at one time Gonzaga. But there are those schools that literally you only have heard of them because of the NCAA tournament. 3 times a month, I'll be driving in Indy, and I'll drive past some middle school. And it happened to me literally on Friday. On Friday, I went to go read for part of the Read Across America week. I went to go read to 4th graders at Clay Elementary School up in Carmel. And as I was driving there, I passed Clay Middle School or junior high or whatever it's called now. And I'm like, holy cow. I mean, I played, 2 basketball games there as a kid, probably had some practices there, whatever. Never knew where it was because I was just riding in the backseat of my parents' car. And I'm like, wow, that's where, okay. That's where Fulton is. Okay. And the same thing with the NCAA tournament. There are universities out there that I guarantee people are like, so that's where that school is. Give me one off the top of your head. Yes, that's a perfect example. St. Peter's. Haven't heard from him since, right? The Peacocks. I mean, think about that. They went to the Elite Eight. Do you remember who knocked St. Peter's out, who burst the bubble for them, who ended the dream, who struck midnight for them?
It wasn't Purdue, was it?
No, they beat Purdue.
That's right. I can't remember.
They beat Purdue in the Sweet 16 because it was like, oh, my gosh, Purdue, this is a given.
By the way, it's fitting that he mentioned High Point because they're in the dance. They are dancing.
Yeah, and that's a super – High Point's the one where, like, you go to school there. My buddy Scott is on the board there. Or he's a trustee. You go to school there, they got a laundry service and theaters in the dorms.
Isn't that where Tubby Smith ended his coaching career?
That might be right.
But they've got a fella on there, Jake. His name is Chase Johnston. Know before you know, Jack Golke 2.0.
Really?
This
dude
hit
11 threes?
Has taken 4 2-point shots all season.
How many three-pointers is he?
132.
Okay. Well, how many does he hit?
64.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Okay. St. Peter's in their run, if I'm not mistaken, they beat Kentucky. They knocked out Kentucky, and we all laughed about it. And then I'll have to look at who they knocked out in the second round.
Were they Kentucky, or was that Oakland? Greg, I think that was, or was it both?
Both.
Okay.
Look this up. Look up the St. Peter's run. I'm pretty sure they opened against Kentucky and beat them. They had an upset in round 2. Then they went to the regional semifinals and beat Purdue. And then in the regional final game, they got beat by North Carolina. I'm 90% certain that's correct. But I can't remember who they beat in the second round in their run. But that obviously, then their coach went to Seton Hall, and the guy with the dirty mustache got an NIL deal. He was one of the first to do so.
They did beat Kentucky. It was Kentucky, Murray State, Purdue, then lost to North Carolina.
Okay, Murray State is the one I forgot then.
Mm-hmm.
That one was that John Morant's Murray State?
I don't think so.
No, John Morant would have been in the league by then.
Yeah.
Right? But that's Murray State's another one. They've had their moments, right? Tennessee Chattanooga one year with T.O. was on that team going back years ago. Valpo was that team for a while. It's great. That's the beauty. That's the thing I love about all of it.
How about this? John Nolan texting us, Jake. I think he's been doing a bunch of these Horizon League
Saw
games.
John Nolan last night.
Yeah, I think he's been doing the Horizon League games for ESPN Plus. Text me and said Chase Johnston began his career at Purdue Fort Wayne.
Really?
Yeah.
John Nolan, who is the voice of the Fever.
During his recruiting visit, John Nolan gave him a tour of what I call Parkview Park.
Really?
Uh-huh.
John Nolan's the guy that got him there?
Yeah, I guess so.
So John Nolan last night when I was at the Horizon League games came over, sat down next to us. You want to talk about a guy that, like a broadcast resume that's impressive because he does the Boom games, he does the Fever games, he does Horizon League games, native of New Jersey, moved to Fort Wayne. And I got all the respect in the world for anybody. What I do for a living and what people do within our field for a living, I think there's obviously there's a huge advantage towards doing it within your home market, your hometown. I could not do this job in 99% of all places because I wouldn't have just the overall understanding of the market. And I have the most respect in the world for people that come in from elsewhere, learn the market, understand it, get to know the history, know the teams, know the personalities, and then become part of the fabric of it. To me, that is that should be the top of your LinkedIn account. I mesh with markets. Now, in terms of LinkedIn, those players in the NFL that have their little memo out there, open to work. The Colts still have some of them and some things to figure out, and they obviously have made a couple of moves since we talked to you last. We'll go over all of it. We'll forecast where things may be headed as free agency, the legal tampering or whatever it's called period is simmered down just a little bit, but we'll rehash all of it, and Holder comes up top of the hour.
Now we're down to 10 seconds to go here in the first half. Let's see what Washington wants to do in the final second. Zoder's going to fire the three and hit it. Well, we mentioned Cody can shoot the three. That's his 9th three-pointer on the year. And that kind of livens things up for the Washington crowd behind us here. And they're going to get the three. In and out. Tapped high in the air. Chased down. A shot from midcourt. Oh, hit the back of the rim. Man.
That's how it sounded when Washington defeated Gary Wallace 65-62 in the 2010 3A state championship. Of course, Washington knows a little bit about long half-court buzzer-beating shots in the finals, but that one went their way. Washington wins it, and Cody Zeller with Jerry Baker on the call there. 20 points and 26 rebounds in the 2010 state finals for Cody Zeller. Would go for 20 and 18 next year in the 11 state championship, the third in his 4 years for the Hatchets. And he also, of course, the 2011 Indiana Mr. Basketball, Sports Illustrated cover boy, you name it, for Cody Zeller, who played 2 seasons for the Hoosiers of Indiana, leading them to the 2013 Big Ten outright championship, and was named an All-American before becoming a top 5 pick, number 4 overall to the Charlotte Bobcats, now the Hornets. He played in Charlotte through 2021 before spending time in Portland, Miami, and most recently New Orleans. Last played in the NBA with the Pelicans in 2024. You can see the players that we'll be talking about for many, many years. As a matter of fact, this right now tournament in the IHSAA, because we are now beyond the sectionals and interregional play, and the scheduling, the ticket information, all of it. You can find everything at ihsaa.org, where you are supporting community schools and young athletes with each and every purchase for a lot less money than you will pay to see them once they get into the college or pro ranks. Again, all of the information, ihsaa.org.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You know, one of the things I thought about with NFL free agency, and I'm not saying this will not be the case with Alec Pierce or will be the case with Alec Pierce, whichever way you want to look at it, but I think there is a coincidence. I'll say coincidence as opposed to irony. And the fact that in order to, at least presumably, make room from a salary standpoint or financial standpoint for Alec Pierce, the Colts had to find a way to get creative and then part ways with Michael Pittman. And I said this yesterday, but it bears repeating. Michael Pittman Jr., he was never a totally glitzy, glamorous, number one receiver in terms of number one receivers are typically, the receiver position has a little bit of a diva nature about it, right? A pizzazz and a style to it. And he was never that guy. But for a couple of years there, he was the best that the Colts had to offer. And in reality, if you are a fan of the Colts, and I don't know when the Colts will again host Pittsburgh, I'd have to look at their schedule on what teams this year are going to be home games. It wouldn't be Pittsburgh, presumably, because it's happened of late. But the bigger thing is, maybe it's a playoff game, whatever it might be. But the reality is that if Pittsburgh comes back and Michael Pittman Jr. finds his way back into Lucas Oil Stadium, he deserves a rousing ovation and a thank you.
Would you like to know who the home opponents are, Jake?
Which division do they play this year? Yeah, go ahead and hit me.
The home opponents, the Houston Texans, Jacksonville Jaguars, Tennessee Titans, obviously. The Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals, Miami Dolphins, Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants. There you go.
Okay.
They have to go to Pittsburgh again.
Colts fans that go to Pittsburgh for that game when he's introduced should give him a hand because he played hurt for the vast majority of time he was here. He just did. But again, this is a guy, if you think about it, the last time that we went through this, gosh, what are they going to do? Are they going to sign the guy? Like, they need to sign the guy. Make sure. Hey, have you heard anything lately? What's the latest? Where's he going to sign? Where's he going to go? It was probably Pittman. And yet, he doesn't see the lifetime of the contract. I think sometimes in free agency, what happens emotionally from a fan standpoint, and for that matter, media as well, in free agency is this. We become more consumed by the emotion of fear of what happens if you lose someone than we do the realities of the excitement on what it would mean to retain them. So with Alec Pierce, who I think is a really good player, don't get me wrong, but I still say that he is kind of a luxury versus necessity because of the other pieces that they have offensively. But with Alec Pierce, I think we, as much as anything else, were judging that, and the barometer for that was less about they need to retain Pierce because he's going to get 1,000 yards receiving and 120 catches and 10 touchdowns. And it was less about that and more about what the optics would be if they didn't get him. Or, you know what I mean? Like, gosh, you can't lose out on him. Why not? You just can't. Well, okay, but for what reason? Well, you got to have this piece if you're going to move forward. Okay, fine.
Let me ask you something, Jake.
Yes.
Holder reported yesterday that the Colts are going to give him 8 to 10 targets per game. And if you take his catch percentage into play and extrapolate that over a 17-game season, at 8 targets a game, would you take just under 1,500 yards at $29 million, 28, whatever it is? Is that a receiver worth that much money?
Yes.
Okay. He would be on pace for 12 touchdowns and was like 80 catches or something like that. If he meets all those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think he's a really good player. I mean, but what I'm saying is, yeah, I just think that we get every year there's a free agent that you're like, they have to get this guy, they have to get this guy, they have to get this guy. And yes, it is gravy, don't get me wrong. I mean, you'd rather have it than not have it. But I think we fall in love with and we become obsessed by the fear of not having it. In other words, yes, he's going to get catches and he's going to get yardage, Eddie, but it's not like if he wasn't here, that wouldn't go somewhere.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I get that, but I think the dynamic of the offense would change dramatically without Pierce, because if you asked every defensive coordinator that the Colts played last year, are you more afraid of
course,
Alec Pierce or the rest of the parts? And they would say Alec Pierce.
But I agree with that. The interesting thing, though, is simply the point that what you're afraid of is Alec Pierce getting behind your defense and making the big play, right?
Uh-huh. And he started to show last year that he can start to slow down and get these out-breaking routes and comeback routes on the sideline.
Understood. But what I'm saying is that element of the part that makes him different is something that you only get like 3 to 4 times per game. It's big, but it's not like it's In other words, of his 120 catches, that's a lot. I mean, let's say he gets 100. If he gets 100 catches, okay, of those 100 catches, 15 of them are going to be beyond 30 yards. Not even that, probably 10.
Right.
The vast majority. I mean, I think he's a wonderful player. I mean, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is, if you were to ask people which emotion in them was greater, the excitement about what Alec Pierce can do or the fear of rejection if he went elsewhere, the second emotion was the greater emotion, the greater feeling within them. But either way, the moves that also were made yesterday, and I can't remember if this was just before we were on the air. My timelines get mixed up. But Kwity Paye now, basically, we know out, and you get his replacement from Tennessee in. Eddie, you tell me if this is too harsh a way of saying it. But basically what we see here is they just traded a Honda Accord for a Nissan Maxima.
Have you seen the meme of the guy at Christmas wearing like the maroon striped shirt, and he's holding up the other maroon striped shirt?
Yes.
That is exactly what this is.
That's exactly correct.
Literally
exactly
the exact
correct.
same thing, except for the fact that Arden Key turns 30. That's the only difference.
How old is Kwity Paye?
He's still relatively young, 26, 27.
Kwity Paye's,
But man, Vegas giving him, 3 years for $48 million, $32 million.
Yeah, it wasn't a
guaranteed.
trade.
Like,
They
what
let
in
him
the
go, and then
world?
they replaced him, right?
Yeah.
They replaced him at less cost. In the case of Kwity Paye, I'm happy for the guy. I don't usually say that. I mean, I don't know these guys. I don't know Kwity Paye for that matter. But his story coming out of college was a pretty inspiring one, just about his family background, his mom, everything else. For him to get paid like that, I'm happy for the guy. Good for him, right? Good for him. We talked yesterday about the news with Zaire Franklin. And by the way, have you ever had the Zaire sandwich at Hoagies and Hops?
I have not.
Oh. He's a Philly guy.
Yeah.
And Philly steak and cheese, of course, that's the thing. So he's got his own version of it.
Oh,
And
yeah?
I guess in Philadelphia, this is considered like sacrilegious, but he puts mustard and ketchup on his Philly steak and cheese.
Ugh,
And so they have listen.
Ugh, mustard.
No. If I'm telling you right now, if I brought you a Zaire sandwich, it is unbelievable. Really good.
Mustard, gross.
Okay. Well, not like yellow mustard,
Yeah, gross.
but you like mayonnaise, right?
Yeah, only
that
on specific
disqualifies.
things.
No, that disqualifies. Mayonnaise on anything is horrific. It's literally it's the worst condiment known to man. But that's where things stand. There have been no new developments today in terms of information about anybody moving within the NFL, correct?
Not really. It's slowed down dramatically compared to yesterday.
And there is no new news on Daniel Jones. But I have a feeling when we get information on him, it's actually going to be old news, not new news. Because we already know what's around the corner. And I don't often say that, but I'm going to in this case. And I'll tell you what I mean by that and why I feel that way on the other side. Holder, top of the hour. Kravitz, bottom of the 1 o'clock hour here. And we're going to go out west, too, and talk Tankathon. Loaded show still remaining here. Tuesday edition, Query Company. Hey there, Jake Query. You know what they have at the Fishers Event Center, Surfside? That's because Surfside, and they just had a release party for their blueberry lemonade flavor with a little splash of vodka inside of it from Surfside. Look for the can with the sunset stripes at just 100 calories and 2 grams of sugar. Surfside is awesome for any event. Iced tea and vodka, lemonade and vodka, refreshing, number one. And number two, no carbonation, so no bubbles. Very smooth and easy to enjoy. Surfside with a wide array of flavors, including the half and halves. Look for it wherever you buy your favorite adult beverage. Please be 21 and please consume responsibly.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Eddie's favorite band. Who was that band you played last entry, Eddie?
That would have been the Rolling Stones.
Was it really?
Yes.
It didn't sound like the Rolling Stones. That was the Rolling Stones?
Uh-huh.
Maybe I meant 2 songs ago.
Well, 2 songs ago would have been the show open.
I would know the Rolling Stones, I would think, right? I saw the Stones at what's your level of fandom for the Rolling Stones?
I don't know.
I mean, would you agree with me on this? I mean, they're one of those bands. Like, for example, I saw them. Okay, yeah, you could absolutely tell it's Mick Jagger, yes. The very beginning of it, though, the instrumental part I didn't recognize.
I'm surprised you didn't recognize this song. It's in a show that we love, Jake.
Is that in Lasso?
It is.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, yes.
Do you know which scene?
No.
It's the scene where Roy Kent decides he wants to go into coaching, so he's leaving the set as a pundit.
Gotcha.
And heads to the pitch right before the start of the game.
What a great show. When does season 3 come out for that?
That's a great question. I don't know.
The one problem I have, as I mentioned before,
is it season 3 or season 4? I think it's season 4.
4. That may be right. Yeah. The one problem I have with any of those shows, any streaming show, is by the time the new season comes out, you're like, I mean, you completely forget. I mean, like Landman's going to be on a year break, right?
That's why I'm rewatching Ted Lasso right now.
Yeah, it's a great show, no question about it. And when you watch shows, when you rewatch it, but because there's going to be a big gap between seasons, is oftentimes when you can look back and you say, oh, I'd forgotten that little clue. Or now it makes sense. Gosh, how did I not see that happen?
August of this year.
Okay. And I mentioned yesterday, and I'll repeat it today. When Daniel Jones comes to an agreement with the Colts, I think we're going to look back and say, we knew that when Alec Pierce agreed. I know at this point I'm beating a horse to the point where it's glue, but I firmly believe that Alec Pierce does not agree to that contract, and he said it. I mean, he said yesterday that he believes Daniel Jones is about to sign a deal. That would appear to be inevitable. I just don't see how he doesn't do so. How he doesn't come to, or how he comes to an agreement without, how he does not have that information that Daniel Jones is going to be his quarterback. Now, the question then becomes, in terms of the health, how healthy is Jones going to be? Certainly, if you look at the example of different sport, different range of motion, different everything, but look what Jason Tatum's doing. And that's coming off of an Achilles. Now, Ralph Reif told us, and it's a really good point, that where the tear takes place with an Achilles can also impact the time frame needed for recovery. And I think he had said with Halliburton, for example, and I don't want to misquote Ralph here, but when he was on the show, I believe Ralph Reif had said that the higher up it is, the easier it is to repair because blood, it's more easily accessible to blood flow, which brings, all the nutrients, oxygen, whatever else, to begin the repair process. I don't know where Daniel Jones's was versus Tatum, whatever else, but you look at Jason Tatum, Eddie, let's be real. I mean, he is playing right now at a level that exceeds, I think, what most people would expect. I mean, didn't we say when he came back, like, oh, he'll play 15 minutes a night? Well, they're basically...
I thought he'd play 15 to 20. They would maybe get him up to 30 max for the rest of the season, but they've got him at 27 minutes each of the first two games. And he's looked solid. He's looked pretty good.
He's looked very good.
Yeah.
I thought your mic was off. There's a button down here that mutes the headset.
Oh, interesting.
And it's very easy for my knee to hit that sometimes at my height.
We do have
so
a update on the Pittman dealio,
okay.
Jake. Albert Burrito Sports Illustrated said the Colts received a 6th-round pick and gave up a 7th in Pittman. So there you go.
And they got also, we now know that they, in terms of the compensatory picks, what the Colts received, right?
Yeah, 2 7th-round picks.
And that's, I think Ballard likes those picks. Now, when it comes to 7th and 8th rounders, one of the strategies that comes into play is this. You need to hit on those picks. And I've never understood, and this would be a good conversation perhaps with Kravitz coming up at 1:30. Bill Polian, for example, if you look at the Colts, and if you're talking about the glory years in terms of the number of big-ticket items on one roster, Antoine Bethea was a great player.
Bethea?
Yeah, depending on which season it was. But guys like Jason David and, what was the corner's name out of Penn State? Not David Thornton, he was the linebacker, but there was guys that were like Brad Scioli, he was a 5th rounder. Guys that were 2nd and 3rd day draft picks in today's terms that made the roster and were solid players. How much of that was that they hit on those guys and that was a really smart pick versus you had so much money wrapped up into your top 10% of your talent pool. So if you had, like in the Colts' glory years, between Manning, Freeney, Wayne, Harrison, Edgerrin, Dallas Clark, Mathis, you had so much money tied up. You had like 90% of your salary cap tied up into 15% of your roster. So as a result, you had no choice but to round out your roster in certain spots with rookie contract, lower rookie contract players. So were the Colts in reality hitting on these draft picks that were brilliant picks that they were placing and scattering throughout? Or did they simply need, from a financial standpoint, to bury a couple of positions here and there that no one would notice that were subpar players, but your top 15% were so strong that it masked that you had deficiencies in those areas? I've never really understood or been able to figure out which of those two is the more applicable truth. But now what we do know is that Chris Ballard loves those 6th, 7th, 8th round guys. Look at Zaire Franklin, who was a really solid player for them. And he was not a 1st or 2nd round pick. They have hit on those. As a matter of fact, you could make the argument the Colts probably have hit more on second or late, 2nd, 3rd day guys than they have even first rounders in the last handful of years. There are a couple of drafts that the Colts had that it is like, woof, big swings and misses. Stephen Holder has been monitoring very closely the hour by hour, minute by minute of the Colts throughout free agency, and he will join us to update us next. Hey there, Jake Query for Chicago's Pizza. Still time, 35 minutes left to get into any of their 19 Central Indiana locations and enjoy the lunch buffet, traditional pizza, deep dish pizza, salad bar with all the fixings, everything fresh, every dressing you could want, and the fresh hand-rolled breadsticks, which every single day the crust is made fresh right there in the 19 Central Indiana locations. You get all of that, all of the options. And in addition to that, the dessert pizza, you get all of that. Think about this. For just $13 out the door. $13 out the door, tax included, which is what you're going to pay for some, like one of those fast food joints where an hour later you're like, ugh, what was that all about? And at Chicago's, it's so fabulous, you're probably an hour later going to say, I can't wait for dinner for the family meal deal for 2 medium pizzas and 1 topping for just $25 with breadsticks. Chicago's Pizza, a story in every slice. 19 locations in Central Indiana, 25 of them statewide. Find a location near you at chicagospizza.com.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Hell yeah, let's party like it's the Hoosier Dome, baby. Colts just scored a touchdown. Fire up the best of 85. Do they still play this at games?
No, they don't
right?
anymore. They stopped that, I think it was like 2-3 years ago.
Only 42 years past its expiration date did they stop doing that. Somebody just asked me the question, by the way. Hey, Jake, if Miami, Ohio loses in the MAC tournament, are they still in the NCAA tournament? I know I've addressed this before, but yes, absolutely. Since 1976, there have been a total of 6 teams, 6, to run the table and go undefeated. 6. You have a 0.004% chance of that happening. If you go undefeated in your regular season, I don't care who you played. It's only happened 6 times in 50 years. That merits you an auto bid to the NCAA tournament. You can either win your conference tournament or you can go unblemished in the regular season. Those are the 2 tickets towards getting in. And that's Miami of Ohio, not Miami of Florida. Yes, Eddie.
And the other thing I want to add too, Jake, is if we're like splitting hairs here on like, hey, is it Indiana? Is it, 500 Auburn getting into the field? Like, what are we doing here?
Right. Well, at that point, you, again.
Do you have to put a value on teams being able to just pull out victories like they have? Even if you considered it a little bit fluky and lucky, like Chicago?
I mean, Miami, yeah. Listen, it's a terrible bubble this year. Miami, Ohio is in based on the fact that they did not lose in the regular season. That merits you getting in. And if you go to school there, they have T-shirts everywhere that say Miami was a school before Florida was a state. Because not to be confused with Miami of Florida, which is the alma mater of our next guest. He joins us on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line from ESPN. Stephen Holder joining us. Stephen, latest as of right now, Colts free agency is what?
Well, first of all, that was one hell of an introduction. Thanks for that. So we're doing okay, by the way, down there at that very young University of Miami.
That's right. But
1925, baby.
Is that when it started? 1925?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, in fact, they had the centennial last year. So we made the college football championship in the centennial year. So I don't know, maybe something to that. Colts. So they're quiet, at least officially for right now, but they're certainly working behind the scenes trying to get some things done. I mean, obviously the big one is Daniel Jones. I know that they want to get that squared away. Now, what I will tell you though is that there's, from the player's perspective, maybe not the most urgency to get that done right now because, it's not like when you're an unrestricted free agent and you're kind of working against the clock because as those big dominoes fall, the money starts to dry up. Well, the Colts have already allocated money for Daniel Jones here. So what they're doing is they're quibbling over how much per year, what are the guarantees, et cetera, but they've already allocated a fair amount of money. That money that they tendered him with the transition tag, that's already going to be counted officially against their cap. It's like a credit card hold. You know what I mean? When you swipe that card at the hotel, so it's already accounted for. So if you're Daniel Jones, you can keep sort of dragging this out if you want to. I'm not suggesting that's what's going to happen, but I'm just saying that's the thing to keep in the back of your head if you see this not happening in the next day or so and you wonder what's going on. That might be what it is. He's just going to say, I can just keep this, just keep the negotiation going until I get what I want or at least get closer to what I want. But he will be here. It's been clear. It's been made clear to me, and that is going to happen. I would say beyond that, the thing that I'm watching for now is there another move at defensive end and certainly linebacker? Those are the 2 spots that I think they have to hit sooner than later.
The Zaire Franklin trade in bringing in a player who plays on the defensive line, looks like a run stopper, not necessarily a pass rusher per se. Is this a Grover Stewart insurance policy?
I don't know if that's how I'd phrase it. I don't know how they see him yet. I think he's an interesting player. He has one more year left on his rookie contract, and I think they want to take a look at him. It's possible. Look, I can't guarantee you that they're not, looking at it with that sort of formula, but I still lean toward believing Grover Stewart will be here. But, look, I mean, they certainly have a lot of things to deal with contractually, and I can't guarantee that. I just can't right now. So we'll see. I think that they can both coexist. I mean, this guy is from a body type, he doesn't look anything like Grover Stewart. He's about 275 pounds.
Right, much thinner, right?
Yeah.
For lack of a better phrase.
Even though he has been at least more of a run stopper, he has the profile, at least the body type of more of a pass rushing interior defensive tackle. So I don't know how all that's going to square, and I don't know what he'll look like in Lou Anarumo's scheme as well. So lots of unanswered questions there, I'd say.
Stephen, when you look, Stephen Holder is my guest, ESPN.com, where you can read his work. One of the a couple of things back to the quarterback situation. We assume that Daniel Jones at the beginning of the year is going to be ready to go from a health standpoint. We assume that. We assume that Daniel Jones is also going to be under more than just the transition tag, and he's going to be a Colt. With those assumptions, are we now past the assumption that they may go out and get themselves a veteran insurance policy backup? Gardner Minshew's already signed, I believe, with Arizona. That kind of a guy. I think there was a fleeting thought that was somebody they could go for a short-term rental, donut tire quarterback. Are we past that point, or could they still go with Anthony Richardson there?
Well, I don't think Richardson is in the picture. I don't think that's changed. I would say I can't close the door on it completely, but I don't anticipate it. I think they have gotten their head around the idea that Riley Leonard can step up and be the number 2. Now, the question for me is, how confident are you that Daniel Jones is going to be ready? I mean, they have more information than you and I, right? They're with him in the building every day as he's rehabbing, because I believe he's doing that here in Indy. That was the expectation. So their training staff and rehab people are with him every day and are charting that progress. They can probably, sort of, target a ballpark for him to be back. So they have a lot of information about that. But I still think there's at least a little bit of doubt there. I mean, you can't just rubber stamp it. I mean, this is a very serious injury. So I do think there's at least a little bit of possibility that this guy's not ready to start the season. I mean, you at least have to leave open the possibility, right? That is at minimum how you have to operate here. So that being the case, I think you have to really be sure that Riley can step up if he needs to play a couple games. But everything that I've heard suggests to me that they believe that. And so we'll see if that changes, but I'm operating under the assumption that Riley Leonard will get the call.
Is there any market for Anthony Richardson?
It's not a big one, but I think to really answer that question, we need the rest of these quarterback dominoes to fall, and they are falling. You saw Tua obviously wind up in Atlanta. What happens with Kyler Murray, for example? Right? There's a few dominoes that got to fall before you get to Anthony Richardson. He's just further down the pecking order. He just is, right? So it remains possible there's not going to be a trade market. Like, that's a real possibility here. So I don't want anybody to expect or assume that they're going to get, a pick of some value. They may not, right? I mean, if enough other dominoes fall at quarterback, then you don't have really a market that materializes there. And there are some drawbacks, right? The injuries, certainly up and down performance. There's upside because he's still 24, and there's a lot more that you can maybe tap into. I get all that, but it really boils down to how many teams are interested and willing to overlook the downsides. So that's just the reality of it. Now, what I'd say is that I do think there's a couple opportunities. One is right now, as these free agency moves sort of pan out. The other is closer to the draft or even during the draft. And we've seen a lot of deals happen, even for quarterbacks, around draft time. So maybe you're a team that goes into the draft hoping you can land a quarterback. Maybe you don't get one, maybe a quarterback who can compete. And maybe if you don't get him or you don't get the guy you want, then you become a player for Anthony Richardson, right? So I just think it just depends on what the landscape is and those other moves that need to happen first.
So if they do not find a suitor for Anthony Richardson, period.
Yeah.
What happens?
I think they cut him. That I believe they will cut him. Yes. It's not, it's not the ending that anybody would want. I mean, for the Colts, you're saying it didn't work and we give up, right? Which is a bad look for them. For the player, you don't like getting cut. However, I'd say this: if you're Anthony Richardson, that might be a better option because then you're not inhibited by trying to work a deal or anything. You can just go wherever you want, right? So that might not be the worst outcome for Anthony Richardson, but I do believe both sides have agreed that this thing has run its course. We could argue about whether they should have waited to make that decision. I think from a pure football perspective, from a pure business perspective, they maybe should have waited till the dust settled with Daniel Jones and until they're more sure about his timeline and all of that. But I also think what's happening here is they don't want to hold him hostage. And so to some extent, they're doing him a favor. They are doing him a favor by allowing him to look around and to gauge interest and at least sending the signal to him that you're going to be able to go out there and start anew somewhere else.
Are the Colts still in play for Trey Hendrickson?
The $1 million question. Well, really, it's a lot more than $1 million. It's, I don't know, maybe like $30 million. I don't know, but I haven't gotten a good read on it. To be completely honest, there's not really any read on Trey Hendrickson. I mean, do we have any sense who's in on him? I don't. And I'm not
Chargers, Bears. There have been a couple of teams linked, but I don't. You know what I mean?
Right, but I mean, we're not. Why hasn't anything happened? Right? I mean, that kind of thing. Right? We've seen a lot of the big dominoes have fallen in free agency already. I believe Adam Schefter, my colleague, made mention that this might take a little bit. That he might take his time in making a decision. He clearly is, by virtue of him holding out last year. I mean, he's not a guy that is unwilling to play hardball, very clearly. Okay, and I'm not against it. I'm all for players making as much money as possible. I'm just giving you the landscape here. I think that's a reality, is that he is willing to drag this out, from all appearances. I think for the Colts, and we are not sure on their level of interest. Were they interested last season when he was on the market, or when the Bengals were at least entertaining offers or considering offers? They were interested, yes. The asking price on the trade was too high. It was a non-starter for the Colts, so it didn't go anywhere, okay? So that's what happened there. Now, of course, now you can just sign him outright. You don't have to worry about that. That being said, he's had another injury. He's a year older. I would have trepidation. That's all I'm saying. Depending on the cost, it all boils down to cost, right? And what are the guarantees? What are my protections? Excuse me. I think you'd have to really deliberate over that. As much as they do need the help, all I'm saying is they can't be reckless here. Look, they're going to lay out a ton of cash, day one cash, for Alec Pierce, presumably Daniel Jones. I mean, a quarterback contract of that value is going to have a big signing bonus. And then to also throw into that pot Trey Hendrickson, who would want a big signing bonus, you're talking about a ton of cold, hard cash. Forget about the salary cap. That's not even important. They can tweak that. They can fake that. It's BS anyway. It's the cash that you got to dole out with that check on day one. That's a big check to write, or several checks. So I think that's the key factor there for me. Do they have the stomach for something like that?
How does Alec Pierce as a receiver, Stephen Holder, my guest from ESPN, how does Alec Pierce as a receiver change without Michael Pittman Jr. on the field?
A fair amount. I think I would expect his role changes a pretty good bit, and here's how. A lot of the time last year, early in past years, Alec Pierce, a majority of his routes were in the field. Now he needs to run a lot of routes because otherwise you're not getting the best out of Alec Pierce because he's most dangerous. But he's going to have to run a bigger route tree this year, and he can do it. I saw him this year, I think, really expand his route diversity and be very effective in the middle of the field in traffic against contested throws. I liked what I saw there, and I think there's more on the bone. I think he can go to another level there. He's going to get more opportunities, no question about it. He was fourth on this team in targets last season, fourth, okay, behind Pittman, Tyler Warren, and Josh Downs. Now, I'm not saying he's going to double his targets or anything, but he's definitely going to see a big increase, and the question is going to be, what can he do with those? Now, a lot of the time, Michael Pittman was getting plays drawn up for him that were schemed up, and you see them, there were plays that were meant to go to him. A lot of the time with Pierce, they may dial up a shot play for him, but oftentimes it is dependent on coverage or this or that, and what's the front, all these different things, right? Can you protect all these things? I think he'll have to rely less on those aspects, and maybe they can scheme him up a little more to get him more involved in the games, where he maybe doesn't touch the ball as much last. So I think you have to. Otherwise, why the hell are you paying him $29 million?
Stephen, finally, non-Trey Hendrickson, non-Daniel Jones department, you are keeping your eye on what Colts story here over the next couple of days?
Well, I think it's the defense is really, for me, the whole ball of wax. I mean, I think offensively, we didn't have real big questions about that beyond Daniel Jones' health, right? Even by subtracting Michael Pittman, I'm not saying it's nothing, but I think they can account for that, right? The question for me is, do you walk out of this free agency period feeling like you have made progress on defense? I know a lot of fans were really over Zaire Franklin, but I mean, subtracting Zaire Franklin doesn't make you better, right? I mean, you got to do something. They have to come out of this feeling like they have made progress. You can't do it all in the draft. You just cannot. So you talked about getting younger and faster. Okay, now you got to do it. So I think the pressure's on there. I think there's a lot of pressure, frankly, on Chris Ballard to accomplish that. Otherwise, they still have a lot of the same problems they had last year.
Stephen Holder, ESPN.com, and he's on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line. Appreciate it, as always, Stephen.
All right, you got it.
All right, Stephen Holder joining us on the program. One of the guys that is, a real domino, perhaps in the Anthony Richardson saga, odd as it may sound, might be Kyler Murray, because, Kyler Murray has yet to be released by Arizona. But once he's released, there is some thought that his landing spot is going to be Minnesota. Minnesota is also thought to be a potential suitor or have some interest in Anthony Richardson. And all of this coming in a peculiar fashion for J.J. McCarthy, because J.J. McCarthy, who got hurt as a rookie, then got chance last year and really was, a disaster, basically, right? And yet it doesn't look like they're going to give him a second year. I mean, it's like they're just basically resigned to the fact it's over. And that's that, and we're going to move on from it. And, I mean, you have to be, I would think, if you're J.J. McCarthy, think about the number of quarterbacks you see. Quarterbacking in the NFL is hard, and it takes time. And there's a very, finite line, and it's probably one of the trickiest things to navigate in sport. It's like when you're playing that Jenga, and you've got that one block, and you're sitting there, and you're anxious, you're waiting, and then, boom, you pull it out. And you're trying to determine, just exactly when it is you need to pull it and how slow to go and whatever else, because otherwise everything topples. And it's kind of like that with young quarterbacks. Go back, and I can't remember, was it Kevin Bowen we were talking to about this? It's such a good point. Look at Peyton Manning's rookie year. I mean, I remember when Peyton Manning was a rookie and Michigan was on its way to the national championship, or maybe it was a co-championship. But I remember people saying the Colts just need to trade Peyton Manning and get a bunch of draft picks and then draft Brian Greasy. I mean, how ridiculous in hindsight does that sound, right? But that's the kind of rookie year he was having. He threw more interceptions than any rookie in the history of the NFL at that time. And yet, only teams, only general managers, only coaches know what the balance is on how long you go with something before you basically just pull out from underneath it and start all over again. And that's an interesting thing to watch in Minnesota, which is of really no relevance to Indianapolis other than the fact that it could have implication on whether or not Anthony Richardson ends up in Minnesota. But I feel for J.J. McCarthy because literally after 1 year, I mean, he's the lead. Like, Minnesota is presumably the landing spot for every single quarterback out there that teams are trying to find somewhere to ship, right? And if you're McCarthy, you got to be like, guys, I'm still here, over here. But they've seen enough, it would appear, and they're done with that.
Has anyone seen my baseball?
You did not know what that was from, huh?
I didn't know what that was from. No.
That was the first line from the movie that you sent to me.
From Warren, yeah.
Do you know that I'm going to confess something that I don't want it to come off the wrong way? Do you know that when I first saw There's Something About Mary, we're only mentioning it because Eddie saw it for the first time the other day. I had to look up whether or not Warren was acting. Does that make sense, Eddie?
Yeah.
And there are definitely parts, there are more than a handful of subtle parts of that movie where you laugh and you almost feel bad for laughing, right? Another underwritten or underrated part of that is when the beginning of the movie, when Ted is at his psychologist and the guy's been out of the office the whole time having lunch.
Yeah. What if it was something else, Jake?
Well, he does come in with if I'm not mistaken, finishing his sandwich, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's very interesting. We'll have to get into that next time.
Yeah.
That's probably how people feel. Maybe the majority of our audience is that way. Bob Kravitz has not been on the program for a while. That's not intentional by any stretch of the imagination, but he has been all over this Colts free agency. And in addition to that, has seen not just the likes of where the Colts are and perhaps where they'd like to go, but the NBA side of it as well in the Pacers in what is the world's worst attempt to mask the fact that we all know they're tanking. But they're doing a good job of being interesting, but while still hanging around that bottom.
Have you seen tonight's injury report, Jake?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there's a new Pascal Siakam has a new injury, does he not? It was wrist, right?
Well, he had the wrist. Yes, that sidelined him for a week. Prior to that, there was a game before the All-Star break. I think he missed one or after because of personal reasons. But hamstring soreness has been a thing that he's been dealing with.
Yeah, I have too, yeah. Those hamstrings get sore. It's tough. They're actually, I don't know if you know this or not.
But this one is a right knee sprain.
You know what they're doing now? Do you think maybe they're making them just fly commercial everywhere? And they're like, you know what? He got off the plane and those hamstrings were sore. Because those seats are tight these days, right? Maybe that's what they're doing. But yes, the injury report. What about Sacramento's? Do we have theirs yet?
I don't have Sacramento's, but for the people wondering, hey, Eddie, hey, Jake, you said, have you seen the report? You both said yes, but you didn't tell me because I haven't seen it yet. Jarvis Walker is probable tonight with a right ankle sprain and mid-back soreness. Andrew Nimhart doubtful with lower back and neck soreness. TJ McConnell out, right hamstring soreness. He did leave the game early. What was that, Sunday night? Yeah, they last played Sunday night. Pascal Siakam out with that right knee sprain. Zubac's out with the left ankle sprain, but I am hearing that he should be making his debut relatively soon. And relatively soon means before the end of the season. Johnny Furphy and Tyrese Halliburton both out.
Yeah, this is the time of year where it starts. Wait, I'm sorry. Did you say that were you clipping your fingernails and there was a small amount of blood? Oh, you know what?
Hangnail
out with left pinky soreness, right?
You got a hangnail. Yeah, the usuals are out. These players are out for the season for Sacramento. Keegan Murray, DeAndre Hunter, Domantas Sabonis, and Zach LaVine.
You know what? I've got lower back, for example. So too probably does Bob Kravitz. Not as bad though these days due to peptide therapies. One of the things from Game Day Men's Health. If you want to avoid the little nagging injuries that puts you on the Pacers injury report, for example, Game Day Men's Health is the place for you. And now, guys, by the way, with clinics in the Indy metro area, including Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood, then Game Day Men's Health, GameDayMen'sHealth.com is the website, is the place for you. Testosterone therapy, peptide therapies, which peptide therapies are outstanding for recovery in terms of your workout. I've been sleeping better since doing the peptide therapies. Absolutely love it. They have weight loss injection as well. Get back in the game. Get back to feeling that younger lifestyle. Get back to the point where you can get the workouts that you'd like. Also, get that recovery and shorten that recovery time, or like I mentioned, just avoid that midday fatigue that can kick in. Game Day Men's Health wants to come up with a game day for you, a game plan for you to get you back in the game. Game Day Men's Health. Look for them online. Find out all the therapies. The other thing I love about it, when I went in there, if there are questions that you have and you want to consult with your own primary care physician or a specialized doctor to make sure that what you're doing at game day is on, they are totally on board with that, and they are big believers in that. Hey, absolutely. We'll talk to them, get everything figured out. That's what I love about Game Day Men's Health. Again, Indy metro area, Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood. Make a consultation. Find out all of their services at GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Halfway through on this Tuesday, Jake Query along with Eddie Garrison. We call it Query and Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
How do you do?
I'm well, and you?
Can't complain.
Joining us now on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line, you, of course, read him at bobkravitz.com, his Substack columns, and a guy that has his finger on the pulse with all of the sports in Indianapolis, as much, if not more so than anybody. Bob Kravitz joining us. Bob, I'm going to give you your choice, as a matter of fact, as I'm going to sit here as the card dealer. Big Ten tournament, Pacers, or Colts? I will let you select the first topic.
Let's start with the Colts.
Okay. We just talked to Steven about this. I want your opinion as well. In terms of the quarterback, we'll begin there. Do you believe it is simply a matter of time before we get a word on Daniel Jones?
Yeah, well, the league year begins tomorrow, so he can start fielding offers at that point. That's my understanding anyway. And, now we find out if anybody's willing to give him north of $40 million coming back from an Achilles tear. And I do think there's a market for him. I think the Minnesota Vikings, just as an example, I think they're a team that might be interested in reaching out and, with an offer sheet. But I think regardless, unless somebody comes in at some insane number, I truly believe the Colts will match and retain him. They wouldn't have kept Alec Pierce if Alec wouldn't have stayed if he didn't think there was every chance that Daniel Jones is going to be here long term.
I mentioned this last week, Bob, and I want your thoughts on it, okay? Did Sam Darnold winning a Super Bowl increase the market value for a quarterback like Daniel Jones?
Yeah, probably so. And that's something that crossed my mind as I was watching that Super Bowl, is that this is the Daniel Jones story, and a guy who got run out of New York, and in Darnold's case got run out of a couple of places, and then has this incredible second act. So, yeah, I think you look at what Darnold did, you got to say to yourself, maybe if we surround this guy with the right kinds of players, we can do the same thing. I don't think they're anywhere close to Seattle defensively, but that's still a work in progress.
Yeah, Bob, in reality, if the Colts get the quarterback, let's say that they and I think we can fairly safely say Daniel Jones is going to be their quarterback, okay?
Sure.
And let's just, for the sake of the discussion, say that he comes back and, physically speaking, is healthy. You have no Michael Pittman now. You have Alec Pierce, we know, retained. We know about Warren and Taylor, the other weapons that are there. You lose Kwity Paye, okay, probably a draw. But are they a better team than they were a year ago?
If Daniel's healthy, yeah, absolutely. Look, Kwity is no loss. He was an underachiever as a first-round pick. Yet another edge rusher that Ballard whiffed on. Are they better? Yeah, I think they lose something in losing Pittman. That's kind of a shame, but, they had to do it to get under the cap, or at least make their cap something they could work with. I think a healthy Daniel Jones makes them a better than 8-9 team. Will they be 8-2 good through the first 10 games? I got questions about that, but it's hard to say they're better or worse just because we're just getting started with this whole process. I truly believe they're going to go out and get themselves another edge rusher. I think they're going to get themselves a linebacker.
You think they get that via free agency or draft or trade?
I think two of the three certainly, maybe even a trade. But I think they've just begun, and you know how Ballard works. He usually waits a couple of days into free agency, looks in the bargain bin a little bit, Dollar General, and finds his guys.
Which is why in a couple years later, he's back at Dollar General, right?
That's exactly it. And that's why they need to go get Trey Hendrickson. You know, he's going to be expensive, maybe not $30 million expensive, but I think Trey Hendrickson just makes too much sense to pass up at this point.
Bob, I have nothing to base this on other than just curiosity. Is there something about Trey Hendrickson, with the numbers that he has produced, to still be available, number one, and this is not the first rodeo of seemingly the opportunity for teams to come in and get him if they so choose, and yet he still is unclaimed. Is there a danger in reading into that?
Well, here's what you read into it. He's 31 years old. It's not ancient for an edge rusher, but it's getting up there. And so I think the number is a problem. The two numbers are problems: his age and wanting $30 million on the open market per season. I think those are the issues that are standing in the way of him getting picked up right away.
Do they need to still, talking about the Colts, go out and get a receiver to replace Michael Pittman?
I think they're going to do that through the draft. Based on everything I've read, this is supposed to be a very wide receiver deep draft. So I think they're going to go in that direction. You just got rid of a guy because he was going to cost you $29 million on your cap. I think they're going to want somebody on a rookie contract to take his place.
Did they bail on A.D. Mitchell too early?
No. Look, I'm glad for the young man. I'm glad he had some good games with the Jets, but he just wasn't going to make it here. I'm sorry, but he's a knucklehead, and he just brandished that way too many times to be comfortable with the idea that you can win with him.
Bob Kravitz is my guest. Java House Cold Brew Coffee guest line is where you're hearing his voice. All right, let's switch to this, Bob. Your opinion. If Indiana does not win their opening Big Ten tournament game against the winner of either Penn State or Northwestern, are they out of the NCAA tournament?
Well, they damn well ought to be, but the bubble is so soft. I mean, I looked today, and despite a really mediocre season, Joe Lunardi still has them as the last team in. So I guess it's possible, but everybody on the bubble has got to continue to lose.
But they are. That's what's amazing, right? It literally,
I know.
Like no one wants in. It's weird.
I know, and they want to expand the NCAA tournament. I mean, that makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Committee calls you and they say, Bob, let's say Miami gets beat in their opening round game of the MAC tournament, or just doesn't win the MAC tournament, Miami of Ohio. Committee calls you and they say, Bob Kravitz, your call. They have one loss. It was in their conference tournament. Are they in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're in no matter what happens, in my view. Granted, they haven't played anybody, but hell, we heard that about Indiana football last year. So, no, I think I watched the game. Who they played the other? Ohio. Very, very tight game. But I was really impressed. I think they're a team that could win a game in the NCAA tournament. They're definitely in. You can't make the case that Indiana deserves in and Miami does not.
I mean, I'm in total agreement with you. Bob, as I keep saying, if you go undefeated in your regular season, I don't care what league you're in. If you play 31 games or whatever it is, and you are unblemished, it's only happened 6 times in 50 years. That alone merits you get that. That alone should be an auto berth. You should get an auto berth for an undefeated regular season.
I completely agree. Look, they tried. I've read a couple of stories. They've tried to schedule up, but it's awfully difficult when you're a mid-major, especially a pretty good one, to make deals with these quad 1, quad 2 teams that might want to come in and play you. So no, I don't think you can penalize them when all they've done is play everybody in their way.
Okay, here's the big one, Bob, to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Let's say the Colts end up, the Pacers. Let's say the Pacers end up, and clearly they are trying their hardest to stay within that top four, right? I mean, we know this. Let's say they end up in that top four. The guy that you most want to see them get would be which?
I haven't done a real deep dive on these guys, but based on what I've seen, and it's been limited. I've seen Peterson play. I'm taken with his talent, but his availability is very much a question. I really like DeBanza.
Yep.
I saw Boozer the other day. He's dynamite. You can't go wrong with really any of the three, and even Caleb Wilson at 4. But based on the games that I've seen, I think DeBanza would be the best fit here.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, if they end up with a pick and DeBanza's on the board, I don't know if you want in on this, Bob. I think Kevin Bone will probably join me. I will literally lead the parade down Meridian Street and around the circle. I think DeBanza is tremendous. A 6'9" guy that can guard on the wing. He has a soft touch. He can shoot the three. He's everything. My mind just immediately starts racing. I'll just put it to you that way.
And he's exactly what they need. I mean, I love Neesmith at the 3, but if you can get a 6'9" wing who can do a little bit. I mean, how good would they be if you got Neesmith coming in off the bench? I mean, that's pretty scary.
I'm telling you, I made a pact last year that if they won the NBA title, I would get a Pacers tattoo. I have no tattoos in case I'm ever a fugitive of the law, but if they get DeBanza, then in 2 years I might be back to Metamorphosis on Broadway Avenue, but we shall see. Bob, appreciate the time as always, man.
All right, buddy. Take care.
BobKravitz.com, where you can read the work of Bob Kravitz. Speaking of Broadway Avenue, sad news yesterday. Not literally. I mean, like no one passed, but sad news nonetheless. We'll get to that, and we'll get you caught up on anything that may have developed here this afternoon in the league next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Funny thing happened to me about 6 years ago. I was driving home. I don't even think it was a weekend night. I'm pretty sure it was a weeknight. That's week, W-E-E-K, not a weeknight like a lame night. But I was driving across Broderpool Avenue, and, you know, I like anybody, I guess, I have a quite the fondness for the recollections of my coming of age, you know, my 20s, 30s, the areas that my buddies and I would go out, socialize, whatever else. And certainly in the mid-90s, Broderpool was the epicenter for a lot of that in Indianapolis. So I was driving across Broderpool Avenue. Of course, I had worked in Broderpool for years. And I saw this gathering of people on the street, fairly large gathering. Matter of fact, kind of blocking Broderpool Avenue. I'm like, what in the world is going on? And why are they all hanging out at OPT? Old Pros Table, which was a regular establishment for my buddies and I. I remember seeing the Freddie Jones Band, who you just heard there at the Vogue one time, and then all moving from there after the show over to Old Pros Table, and the fireplaces were going. And there's a level of, you know, just a comfort in a place like that. And I always loved it. And when I think about the Pacers' great runs of the 90s, you know, that entire 95 playoffs, where they, of course, beat New York and then went and played in Orlando and lost in Game 7 in Orlando. But, you know, that playoffs and the first couple of rounds of the 94 playoffs as well, my buddies and I watched almost every game inside Old Pros Table. I loved it. And that night when I was driving home 6 years ago or whatever it was, I saw these people and I pulled over and said, what in the world's going on? They said, oh, we're having kind of a toast or a celebration towards the end of Old Pros Table. I said, what are you talking about? So, well, it's closing. And I couldn't believe it. Oh, my gosh. So, you know, I got out to kind of celebrate with everybody the fact that Old Pros Table and what it had meant to all of these strangers and then myself. And lo and behold, like a week later, the news came out that no, someone else had bought it, regular patrons or employees or something. And we're going to keep it afloat, which was great news. But a number of factors came into play against it. The construction of Broderpool Avenue that basically shut it down for like 2 years and made it difficult to get in there. The challenges of parking, especially as they eventually got rid of the different parking lots behind it and built, and I get it, I mean, built residential stuff. Obviously, there have been the fair share of issues with crime in Broderpool, especially in late wee hours. But I think more so the construction, the parking, and just as life moves on, people going into other areas of nightlife in Indianapolis. And so yesterday, I was sad to hear that Old Pros Table, in fact, now is closed. And that is one, and I know I speak for a ton of people of certainly the area where I grew up and the era in which I grew up, of saying that it's sad. It's an unfortunate part and evolution of life in general, that things change and time marches on. But to those that were a part of keeping the doors open and, you know, making the drinks or making the food or whatever it might be at Old Pros Table that made it a possibility, simply a thank you on behalf of a lot of people, because there were a lot of great times in that joint. I had a lot of fun there, a lot of it. When we come back, NFL free agency has kind of hit like this weird lull period. And that might not be bad news, or maybe it's good news for the Colts. But there's one question about the Colts right now that I think is getting lost in the shuffle of all of it. I'll explain and we'll discuss next. Hey there, Jake Query for Surfside. Look for the can with the sunset stripe. Surfside they just had a release party, as a matter of fact, over the weekend, a launch of the new blueberry lemonade with vodka. And then, of course, you have standard lemonade, a wide array of flavors for their tea, standard tea, raspberry tea, mango tea. You can do half and half, meaning half tea, half lemonade, all with a splash of vodka right there in the same can. They have a variety of flavors, and all of it is so smooth because with no carbonation, it is so easy to enjoy. Just 100 calories, 2 grams of sugar in Surfside. Look for it wherever you buy your favorite adult beverages. Please be 21 and please consume responsibly.
This is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
We have tickets to give away, do we not, Eddie?
We do indeed.
That would be, and I will allow you.
It's not for Phil Collins.
I do like Phil Collins. Remember our discussion the other day, bigger 80s icon, Phil Collins or David Lee Roth?
I do remember that conversation, yeah.
That's the kind of conversation, or the conversation of maybe recollection of winning tickets on this program that you can have with us if you are at the Fan Invitational 2026 golf outing presented by Franciscan Health. April 30th, Legends down in Franklin from 10:30 in the morning until 5:30 in the evening. We will all be there, swinging the golf club around, doing the shows live out there. Had a ton of fun last year. Last year we did it at the end of the golf season. This year to kind of kick off the golf season. Again, April 30th, and Franciscan will also be there, Franciscan Health, and I love the work that they do in making sure that you are aware of the different things from a health standpoint. They will have out there they're answering questions for you, do screenings, whatever it might be. We would love to see you out there at the station website, 1075thefan.com, where you can get all of your information and get registered for it, whether it be individually or with a foursome. Now, those tickets, Eddie, are for Eric Clapton, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And have you determined what fashion you're going to use to give away said tickets for Eric Clapton? And also, do you have the information as to when this concert's taking place?
Yes, Tuesday, September 8th at Heritage Bank Center. That is the date of the concert. Eric Clapton with special guest Jimmy Vaughn. Let's do this via the text line, 317-239-1070.
Okay, and what number? Texter, if you will?
Let's see, what number am I feeling today? Let's go with 29 in honor of Alec Pierce getting 29 a year.
Okay. That's a lot of people that we're assuming are listening to the program, Eddie.
Yeah?
Seems a little confident, does it not? Yes, sir?
We have an update on one of the free agents of the Colts, Braden Smith, staying in the AFC South, and he's going down south to Houston.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a lot of discussion whether or not Braden Smith would retire. What are the terms? Have they been released?
I haven't seen terms. All I've seen is the report that he's going down to Houston.
Okay, so that means the Colts will, and they obviously have become accustomed to that right side of the line, with different people filling in over there. But good player during his time here in Indianapolis, but now on his way to Houston. Here's the thing about all of this.
2-year deal.
That I think is a little bit lost in the shuffle. The Colts right now are in a situation where they are, we know, retaining Alec Pierce. And I mentioned earlier, and we could certainly discuss this till the cows come home about whether or not, and I think Alec Pierce is a really good player, don't get me wrong. But I do think that we, to an extent, get caught up in and fall in love with almost, as much as we love what a player is, I think we also are protecting ourselves emotionally from worrying about what we would lose if a player is to go elsewhere. And if that makes sense. You know, I've always said, like with gambling, when I go to Vegas and people are like, do you play a lot of the casinos? And I'm like, I really don't. Not because I have anything against it, but because the thrill of winning money to me doesn't register as high on the emotional meter chart as the gut punch of losing money. And I think sometimes in free agency, we get so caught up in, they got to retain this guy, they got to get this guy, they got to get this guy, they got to re-sign this guy, whatever. And we get so caught up in that it's more about worrying about what would happen if they were to leave than it is celebrating the benefit of having them. Now, Pierce is a really good player. I get it. He's a really good player, and he does bring something to the table that is hard to replicate. That ability to get behind a defense and the different ways in which he can keep their offense alive, and he has really diversified himself as a player as well. But as much as we talk about Pierce, as much as we talk about the Daniel Jones situation and what seems to be, I think, a fait accompli at this point, that he is going to end up as the quarterback beyond just the transition tag and they'll match whatever comes his way. We could be proven wrong in that, but it would surprise me. You know, could somebody come out of the woodwork and just say, that's it, we're giving him 4 years and $220 million, and the Colts say, yeah, too rich for our blood? I guess that's possible. I don't think it's probable. And I don't think Alec Pierce is here unless he knows that Daniel Jones is coming back.
2 years, $25 million, 13.5 guaranteed
for Braden Smith.
For Braden Smith down in with the Texans.
Now, here's what, when we talk about that, and we talk about Kwity Paye going out the door and Braden Smith leaving and trading away Zaire Franklin and Michael Pittman Jr. going to the Steelers and all of those things. One guy we haven't talked a lot about is Anthony Richardson. And what I found of note yesterday, the Colts made it very clear a couple of weeks ago that Anthony Richardson was free to seek a trade. That means that Anthony Richardson's agent was told, hey, listen, if you can go out there and find somebody, have at. That's not to say that won't happen, but it hasn't yet. And even though I realize it's free agency, to some extent, a trade, it's a free, you know, it would be like the Pittman situation where the Colts would basically take minimal back because it's like, look, this is essentially a salary dump. And I know that Richardson is entering the last year of his contract, and so it would be a team that would be looking to get him and then sign him, or even get him for the year and sign him to maybe a 1-year deal, a flyer, to see what's out there, kick the tires on it. And Minnesota is rumored for a number of things. Minnesota is linked to the possibility of, they're still, I've seen, you know, some people saying that they may make an offer to Daniel Jones. He knows the quarterback room there. He knows the staff. He knows the doctors. Minnesota is very much, it would appear, in play or in discussion or potential for Kyler Murray, who will not be released until tomorrow, and at that point, then he becomes a free agent. And Arizona, that's the game plan, is Arizona's releasing Kyler Murray, and then Minnesota is thought to be one of the landing spots.
Which makes a lot of sense for Minnesota, Jake, when you think about it. They've been in cap hell this offseason. They had to shed so much salary that Kyler Murray, kind of like with Tua Tagovailoa with Atlanta, he's going to be on a minimum contract.
Right.
So getting a starting quarterback essentially for $1.3 million makes a ton of sense for them.
But what Minnesota has is the same thing as the Colts in this regard. J.J. McCarthy was drafted by Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy got hurt early, then got his opportunity, and it did not go well. And I don't know what the time period is with a quarterback between when you pull the plug and when you say, we're going to give this more of a go. Look at Malik Willis, right? Suddenly now he's like this guy's, this is a prime free agent. Let's go out and get him. Well, there was a time where he was with the team, got the keys early, and that team gave up the go, threw in the towel on him. So it's a very slippery thing to know when to go ahead and further invest and when to say enough is enough. But all of this free agency talk, all of it, all of the contract speak, all of the numbers, all of the noise, all of the speculation, all of the fun, all of the conjecture, all of it, is all of it making us forget that we are discussing, supporting, pulling for, watching a franchise whose general manager has been here for a decade with a playoff win and is desperately seeking someone to take off his hands the most critical draft pick he has made in his tenure. The most single important position in sport is one that the Colts waited and delayed forever. They waited and delayed forever before they finally decided it was time to draft a franchise quarterback. They had other years they could have done it. They had other ways they could have acquired one. They waited and waited and waited and kicked the can and kicked the can and kicked the can and finally landed on their guy. The guy that they said, if we had the number one pick in the draft, this is who we take. Now, maybe they said that as gamesmanship. Maybe they said that to lift their guy. But they said it. I didn't say it. They said it. And before the completion of that player's rookie deal, they're looking for anybody to take him off their hands. And that is an incredible indictment on the foresight or lack thereof within the Colts organization. And yes, they get credit for finding Daniel Jones and seeing something in him that perhaps other teams did not, and giving him the weapons to get him comfortable, to allow him to continue at the pace in which he played that got him a big deal in New York. They get credit for that. But it doesn't mask the fact. It's easy. Let me rephrase that. It's easier to determine how good a player is or can be when you have tangible, long-term proof of who they are as an NFL player. The real test is in evaluating how good they're going to be based on projection of looking at throwing motion, footwork, especially when a guy has a limited number of games in college. That's the real test, and the real greatness comes in that determination. Bill Polian, who is the blueprint that we use in NFL team build in this town because he did it longer and better than anybody that we've seen in this franchise. Different era, perhaps, but look at the thing that the Colts did. And yes, having Peyton Manning helps a lot. Peyton Manning made a lot of very good players look like great players, and a lot of good players look very good. But, and believe you me, I was pretty critical of Polian at a lot of different periods in a lot of different ways. I think Peyton Manning helps a ton. But they drafted Dwight Freeney. They drafted Reggie Wayne. They drafted Edgerrin James. They drafted Dallas Clark. He inherited Marvin Harrison. That helps. He drafted Peyton Manning. On and on and on. And you have to hit in the draft at the top of your draft. And the Colts have not swung and missed on all of them. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. But Chris Ballard often says that the thing that he most believes in and most wants to do is taking care of his own and keeping them internally. But in the single most important pick of his tenure, at the single most important position, the Colts now are not only putting it out there for anybody that will listen that that player they selected in that spot is available, but not only that, seemingly nobody's picking up that phone. And the further indictment, it's one of two things. They either totally misevaluated Anthony Richardson or they totally misplayed how to develop him. I think it probably is as much the latter as anything. But Chris Ballard since then has said and is on record of saying that guys need reps. Guys need to go through in college and get reps. Yet at the single most important draft selection he has ever made as an executive, he went with one that everyone at the top of the page, what it said was, doesn't have a lot of reps. And I don't think they gave him a lot of resources and tools to work with beyond that. It's not me sitting here saying that Chris Ballard needs to be run out of town. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, do we truly, at its core, we can sit here and, as I have, question whether or not giving up 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner was the right thing to do. But at the time that they did it, you thought those were going to be like the 25th pick in the draft. And you threw an A.D. Mitchell with it, not knowing necessarily that you were going to be down a receiver in 6 months. We can sit here and poo-poo the fact that they gave away 2 first-round picks. But then when you look at the draft history, it's like, I don't know, how valuable would those have been anyway? Right? There are a couple. He's had some good picks, don't get me wrong, and had some good drafts. But there are also a couple of drafts for the Colts that are big-time woof. Drafting's an inexact science. I get that. What did people said? Like, if you can hit on 40 to 60%, you're doing well? Eddie, give me a year off the top of your head in the last 5. Just name a year off the top of your head.
2016. Just kidding. 2021.
2021 draft. Okay. Your first overall selection, Kwity Paye. Didn't make it the lifetime of the first contract, right? Dio. Didn't make it the lifetime of the first contract.
Yeah, he did.
Dio did?
Yeah, he hit free agency last year and went to Chicago.
I was thinking they traded him.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Sorry. So Kwity Paye, they must have extended by 1 year, right?
They picked up the 5th-year option on Kwity Paye. Dio was a second-round pick, so he doesn't get a 5th-year option.
Kylan Granson.
He saw the entirety of his contract, but didn't do much.
Sean Davis.
I don't think he made it out of training camp.
Sam Ehlinger. Okay, you take a flyer there. I get it. Mike Strawn. Remember, Mike Strawn was going to be like annual wonder, right?
The training camp All-American.
That's right. 7th-round pick, not bad. Will Fries. You've gotten some service there, right?
Now in Minnesota, yeah, got a big deal. I think that one of those 2 comp picks that the Colts got today was from him. Now, 2022, better. Alec Pierce, obviously good pick, and you traded back for that. Good pick. Jelani Woods, injury there, we'll kind of never know. Bernard Ryman, really solid pick. Gets a ton of credit there. A lot of people thought it was a reach. Good pick. Nick Cross, same. Eric Johnson, Drew Ogletree, and then Curtis Brooks and Rodney Thomas. How about
23. Anthony Richardson, Juju Brents. Josh Downs was a really good pick. Outside of that, I mean, you didn't get really anything after round 4. Lot of swings and misses there. But the Richardson thing to me is not even being talked about enough, maybe because we have seen how long it would take. You know, this has been a long process of us knowing the inevitability of it. And again, maybe he didn't get a fair shot because they handed him the keys too early. Whatever it may be. At any rate, for whatever the reason, they either misevaluated him or misdeveloped him. It's one of those two. And both of them, to me, are big indictments. And it's only significant because of the fact that we waited forever for them to finally address that situation. And it's as big a swing and a miss as we've seen at that position in this league in the last handful of years. And notably because, at least now, and maybe I'll be proven wrong in an hour, but it doesn't seem as though it's the kind of prospect that has a lot of people perking up their ears. I mean, do you – I keep hearing Minnesota. But if you had your choice between Kyler Murray and Anthony Richardson, wouldn't you go with Kyler Murray?
If you're looking for somebody to start day one, yeah.
I agree that Richardson seemingly has more
if you're looking for
unknown
somebody
about him, right?
to compete with J.J. McCarthy and Camp for the starting spot, then Richardson makes sense. But if you're looking for a starter for week 1 of next year, then I would go with Kyler, yeah.
That silence jumped out at me. It jumped out at me. Now, the other thing to keep an eye on is whether or not, and Eddie, we talked about this, if you had to go and get, and with Richardson, I get the fact that you just can't keep him around for that insurance policy because it just would be too much. I mean, there would be too much speculation and wondering what happens, and can you really start him for 2 games and then bring him back? So if you're not ready to hand the keys to Riley Leonard, and this isn't a huge deal, but some of those names that we mentioned, Eddie, as potential fill-in, backup, Matt Hasselbeck kind of role for you have also gone by the wayside because they've already found homes elsewhere, right?
Yeah, you would have to expect or assume that they have a lot of confidence in Riley Leonard of being their backup quarterback at this point in time. And we've had a couple moves in the last handful of minutes, Jake. Romeo Dobbs, who was with the Green Bay Packers, is going to New England, 3 years, $60 million. And I pray, I know the Jets have made a lot of signings, but their social media team and digital team, they're going to have a lot of work to do on this Photoshop. Geno Smith back in the Jets uniform, Jake.
Really?
Yes, he is being traded from Las Vegas to New York. The Jets are receiving a 6th-round pick. The Jets are giving up. Yeah, the Jets are giving up a 6th-round pick, and the Raiders are giving up a 7th plus Geno Smith.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can guess all the teams Geno Smith has played for in his career. You ready?
Okay.
Did he start in New York?
He did.
How many total teams are we talking here?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
You know 2 of them.
Well, I know
3 of them. Sorry.
New York, Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there was somebody after New York, right?
There are 2 teams after New York.
Was he a starter for both of them?
No.
Okay, was he with, don't laugh here, was he with the Rams?
No.
Was he with the Patriots?
No.
Okay, AFC or NFC?
One of each, I think. One of each.
Okay, lastly, the divisions.
You're looking at the AFC West for one and the NFC East for the other.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Philly?
No.
Okay, who was the NFC East?
New York Giants were right after the Jets.
Zero recollection of that.
Yep, because he was the backup, too.
Zero recollection of that. Daniel Jones, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then you said AFC West?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the Raiders. Okay, hold on. I don't okay, just on a hunch here. Was he with Denver?
Nope, the Chargers.
Was he? Vaguely recall that.
Yeah.
Vaguely recall that. A late round pick swap is what goes on for Geno Smith.
Oh,
right?
he was the backup to Eli Manning in New York. Daniel Jones wasn't there yet.
That long ago. Okay. I have no recollection. Did he start a game or play a game? Or was being a backup for Eli like being a backup for Peyton?
He was the quarterback that came in for Eli Manning that when he ended his 210 game starting streak. And became the first quarterback to start for both the Giants and the Jets.
Ever?
Yeah.
Okay. If Minnesota, somebody raises this point, Matt raises this great point. I think Minnesota must be done with J.J. McCarthy because there's no way you bring in Anthony Richardson or Kyler Murray to, like, tutor J.J. McCarthy, right?
Now, the other question I have is this. Is the Anthony Richardson to Minnesota crave coming from Indy or is it coming from Minnesota? I feel like it's a lot of Indy-related smoke and hype trying to generate interest from other teams.
I think that's fair.
Trying to, look into what Kevin O'Connell said to Anthony Richardson that after that game on Monday Night Football the week
like
after he got benched. It's like
putting your car in the front yard with a sign that's like runs great, blows cold air. Okay. You're begging people to like stop by and look at it, but it doesn't mean that you know what I mean? Doesn't mean that anybody has any interest. I don't know. But if I'm wanting to tutor or get one last burst of let's see what can be done for J.J. McCarthy, I don't know that I'm going and getting one guy that tapped out of a game and the other guy that's addicted to Call of Duty. Hey, come tutor our guy on how to be a quarterback in the NFL. Just try not to do it between when you're watching video games or voluntarily taking yourself out of games and then joking that you were just tired. I mean, And Anthony Richardson, by all account, nice guy. I think he's liked by his teammates. I think part of it is they just themselves mishandled it. And he was never, if you knew coming into it that he was a player that didn't have a lot of reps under his belt and a lot of experience, then why would you just automatically anticipate that he's going to be turnkey ready to go and understand everything going into the position? This has to be one of the few times this late in the year in the this late in the year in the NBA season where two teams are playing with a combined total of 30 wins. There cannot be a lot of times a week before the NCAA tournament begins that there are two teams playing an NBA game with a combined total between the two of them of 30 wins. But that's what you have in play tonight in the capital of California. And that's not to say that it doesn't have some intriguing storylines. It does, which is why somebody who's covering it will join us next.
listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Pacers are in Sacramento tonight to take on the Kings. Before we do that, Eddie, quickly, did you get to number 29 for the Eric Clapton tickets?
Yes. We actually got a lot of responses of people trying to get in on these Eric Clapton tickets, Jake.
So nobody had the slow hand on actually sending the text is what you're getting
Dave
at, right?
from Greenwood, shout out to Dave. I also did go through the Rolodex, Jake, and I was able to find that we have a 4-pack of tickets to the Fisher's Freight.
Indoor football, baby.
That is correct.
That Fisher's Event Center is fabulous. You can get
for their home opener.
You can get a Surfside while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 21, please.
That is on Saturday.
Okay, and you are giving those tickets out in what fashion?
I've got a trivia question, and I want you to answer it via the text line, 317-239-1070. Seems pretty fait accompli, as you would say, Jake, that Fernando Mendoza will be the first overall pick in the draft next month.
Yep.
Las Vegas is on record stating that they want a veteran to be there so they don't feel forced to start Mendoza immediately.
Okay.
Who was the last quarterback taken first overall in the NFL draft to not start week 1? That is your trivia question.
May I, if I may? I'm raising my hand with a question.
Okay.
Was this an injury situation?
No.
Okay. That's a great trivia question. Dustin Dopirak joining us now on the Java House Cold Brew Coffee Guest Line. Did I say the last? It's Dustin
Dopirak.
Thank you. Joining us now, Pacers and Kings tonight. And Dustin, this late into the season, is this the first time that you have covered a game where it's pretty clear that both teams are begging the other to win?
No, it's like the third in like a month.
Yeah, I guess you're right? And in those others, the Pacers managed to win by losing, right?
Yes, I think they've successfully lost all of them, I believe. No, that's right. No, they haven't lost all of them. I didn't go to Brooklyn, but they beat Brooklyn.
Okay, I forgot about that. But they had Washington twice
and
and Dallas where they got the job done, right?
Yes, indeed. And Utah prior to the break. Is that it? I'm trying to think. Is there another one? Am I forgetting one? Oh, Memphis.
You forget that Memphis is that bad, right?
Yeah, Memphis is that bad.
Okay, and I know that this gets into a dangerous area because it gets confusing very quickly. But the reality is this. In terms of, because for the Pacers, they need, and I'm trying to think of how I can word this because I suck at math, okay?
Yeah.
The Pacers have to
I'm
select.
not saying you do, but go ahead.
What's that?
Go ahead. I was not necessarily agreeing. I don't know how good you are or not at math.
Well, I'm terrible. But so the Pacers have to have the first, second, third, or fourth pick in the draft in order to retain their pick. That we know, okay?
Correct.
The odds of them landing in the top 4 begin to drastically slide if they don't finish in the bottom what?
I guess you would say drastic at 5. So the top 4, the top 3, the worst 3 records are all 14% for number 1 overall, 52.1% for top 4. I'm looking at the Tankathon simulator odds there. Fourth, if you're the 4th worst record, it's 48.1% chance of being top 4, 12.5 for being number 1. If you're 5th, you're 42.1% at top 4, 10.5 for number 1. 6th is 37.2%.
Okay, so they need to be. So right now they're safe if their top 3 suck, right?
Sure, right, yeah.
Okay. But
it's not bad if you're 4th or 5th, but you're better off being top 3.
But there is not a difference in terms of their odds of drafting within the top 4. Those numbers or those odds do not change regardless of whether they're the first, second, third, or 4th worst team, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So they just got to stay in that bottom 4 is what we're getting at. So with that, who is in and who's out tonight?
Siakam's out. McConnell's out. Nemhard's doubtful, which means he's probably out. Obviously, Furphy and Halliburton are out. Zubac is out. And I think that's it. Jarris Walker dinged up his ankle a little bit, but he's probable. So you're probably looking at a Cam Jones, Quentin Jackson starting backcourt, or either Quentin Jackson or Cam Jones and Ben Shepherd. Walker, Neesmith, Jay Huff is probably your starting five.
Okay,
so then after that, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so Jay Huff, for example, continues to get minutes. We wonder when Zubac will.
Game. Jay Huff hasn't missed a game, which is amazing.
You know what?
But
I kind of like Jay Huff. Like I think Jay Huff.
Sure.
Honestly, I think Jay Huff. If there's a silver lining in this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm thinking of two. We're going to see how good a mind reader you are, Dustin. If there's a silver lining in this season, it's that these two players, I think, have started to show that once everybody's back in the mix a year and a half from now, whatever, that they absolutely are steady rotation and spot starting guys that you can count on. Those two are?
If one's Jay Huff, the other's Jarris Walker.
Correct. Would you agree with both those?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think right now, I think you would play probably both Potter and Huff behind Zubac as backup fives. I think both of those guys are capable, and they each give you something different. So it's really can depend on matchups. But Huff gives you a guy that can step out and shoot threes, and that's got some real jump, just real leap to him. Where Zubac is just solid. So those two play off of each other. But I think if you've got there are guys that come off the bench as fives that you wouldn't use Huff for, that Micah Potter's a better fit for. Micah Potter, I think, steps into the Tony Bradley. This is the guy who deals with Mitchell Robinson and all of his ilk at this point, or role at this point. But, Walker, I think the last, 2 months has been really basically what everybody was waiting for. It looks a little odd just because they haven't been winning, and if you're not watching this team closely because they're not winning, you're not necessarily seeing all of it, and you're also thinking, okay, well, what if that is empty calories and just stats because somebody has to play and somebody has to put points on the board. But I think when you watch him on a daily basis, you can see real growth. Plays with a lot more force, gets downhill off the dribble. You're just seeing him basically just use the physical gifts that he has in a way that he hasn't before. Playing with to use Rick Carlisle's one of his favorite terms, force. Getting downhill, driving the ball. Just really playing with force around the rim, also just playing solid, pretty steady defense. Still see some issues with, he's also shooting the ball really well from outside. Still see some issues with turnovers. He's the type that you're going to see some just absolutely gorgeous passes from him, and then some that you're like, what were you trying to do there? But all the same, the entire level for him has risen pretty dramatically, I think, over the course of this year. And I think regardless of who they draft could make an impact, depending on, I think he's got a better chance of being in, the starting small forward role, or not starting backup small forward role if you draft Peterson, then maybe DeBonsa. DeBonsa kind of shakes things up a little bit. But for the most part, I think Walker is put himself in a pretty steady position that he's a rotation guy next year.
Hey, for what reason was Micah Potter available? In other words, I think he's played really well. He can shoot. He's got a nice shot. He's pretty active. He seems to be a really smart rebounder, if there's such a thing. And I'm just surprised that he was readily available and that somebody else had not gotten him into their rotation.
Yeah, I think that there are some flaws there. He's not a great pick-and-roll defender, for instance. I think that's the thing that stands out. He's a little bit slow-footed. So if you're bringing him into actions a whole lot, that's an area that he can get exposed. So I imagine if you see that enough, then that stands out to you. But, yeah, to your point, he's shooting 41.4% from the floor. Rebounding at a really good rate. I got to see his per 36. I'm pulling up his basketball reference page right here. But it's good. Was he per 36? He's at 8.5 rebounds. He had 11.1 at Utah. He's obviously been in some weird spaces as far as just having an opportunity to step in. I do think the Team USA experience helped him out a whole lot, but I think he just missed making San Antonio's roster. They've got certainly some guys at the 5, certainly, Wemby for one, but, Luke Cornett and I think some other bodies that are pretty useful, at the 5. And he was, he ended up on the G League squad on the Austin Spurs. So I think he's in that he's in that realm of 5s that are going to go back and forth. He's basically, to borrow a baseball term, he's kind of a quadruple A guy. But that means he can play for a lot of people. And he is shooting a lot better. I mean, he shot 31.6% for Utah last year. He's at 41.4%. From 3 this year. So he's been a lot more effective shooting the basketball from outside than he was a year ago. So I think that's a significant step that he's made, and I think some of it comes from being able to play more. He's been passing the ball really well. I think he's had more of an opportunity to show out, but I think part of it, was just he's the type of guy that can get caught in the numbers game because he's going to be a third center wherever he's at. And I think San Antonio might have just had too many guys for him to be one of them.
The Sacramento, I've only, Dustin, driven through it, kind of around it for that matter. I'm always fascinated by this. Rich Nye used to do a really good job when the opening this time of year, when the NCAA tournament would come about and Indiana or Purdue would get seeded to some, out weirder city or whatever else. He would always do a story to kind of give you a feel or a taste of the city where he was. Sacramento is got to be the NBA city that the fewest people have actually visited. Honestly, what's it like? Like, is downtown Sacramento similar to downtown Indy? Smaller, bigger, same feel?
It's a similar feel. Part of it because it's a state capital, and it doesn't feel like the other California cities much at all. But it's relatively nice weather. I'm trying to piece this all together. So I always stay at the same. For some reason, this place is like affordable but nice.
Yeah, the Howard Johnson, though, right?
I'm like, the Howard Johnson. Oh my God, I'd be in trouble. But yeah, so I'm like a quarter mile from where the A's are playing their games now. Which is interesting. Like you can see some level, like if you watch an A's game on MLB TV, because God knows they're never going to be on national television. But you can see some of the surrounding area, and it's pretty random because it's a AAA ball field, but that they're just repurposing for the A's right now as they're in transition to Vegas. But it's like the area of West Sac is fine. There's some sort of sketchy territory. I'm like right by a bowling alley and like 3 much sketchier hotels. So there's this big sort of like let me see here. Like there's a bridge that goes across the Sacramento River. It's a little bit iconic. Basically, it's got like this sort of big and yellow, and like on the other side of it, they have this sort of like old Sacramento area that's like it's got like an old Western feel, to it. That I think they sort of built this stuff up. I don't know how much of it is sort of original and how much of it isn't. It's a little touristy, but it's like sort of right on the river there. And then when you keep going on like the Capitol Mall Road, you run right into the California State Capitol, and everything there is sort of what you expect, in terms of what's around a Capitol building. A lot of stuff that's just, sort of there to cater to, government employees, state Congress people, that kind of thing. Your Capitol grills, your pretty high end, but chain restaurants, that sort of thing. And so, it's pretty, it looks nice, but there's a lot of indie, it is the closest thing to what would happen if you just picked up Indianapolis and put it in California. It's the closest thing to what that would be.
It is basically halfway between San Francisco and Tahoe. That much I know as well, which is how I went through it, because I was going from San Francisco to Tahoe. But and it's also where 8 is Enough took place, which is the best part about it. Dustin will have the coverage tonight, Pacers and Kings, in the race towards staying in that bottom 4, basically, and we'll see whether or not, for example, Andrew Nembhard gets out on the floor. But either way, all the coverage there for Indy Star. You don't think so, huh?
You're not going to see Andrew Nembhard. No.
All right. We'll see. Dustin, right. I appreciate the time as always.
Thanks as always. Thanks for having me, Jake.
Enjoy, by the way, that continental breakfast tomorrow with the Howard Johnson. It's wonderful. They've got great bacon, and you can make your own cereal and omelets, the whole deal. Did you ever watch 8 is Enough, Eddie?
No.
Great show. Took place in Sacramento. That's the only knowledge I had of Sacramento when I was a kid. JMV is here. He will be with us for the crossover brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141 is the telephone number. Yes, Eddie?
Would you like to know the answer to the trivia question, Jake? We do have a correct answer. Only 2 people have given a right answer, that is. A lot of incorrect replies to the trivia question of...
Before the answer, give me one hint.
I was going to say, I'm just giving the question. Is the last quarterback to be taken first overall and not start week 1 in the NFL of the following season?
And it was not injury related.
Not injury related, no.
Is the player still playing in the NFL?
He is indeed.
Is he playing with the team who selected him?
No, he's not.
Okay. I'll give you my guess next.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, I'm going to give a couple of guesses here. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Let me ask you this other hint. If you and I were going to go this December and watch this guy play a home game, would we pack a parka?
No.
I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield.
You would be correct. Yes. Can you name the guy who started?
Okay, there's the big question.
In Cleveland.
Boy, I mean, that's a tough one because Cleveland has had so many go through there, right?
Mm-hmm.
What franchise was this quarterback most known for being a part of?
Oh, boy. He has been a journeyman. He was a starter for one team and had an unfortunate accident happen and lost his job to a guy that was just drafted in the first round of that year this happened. He was recently in a big market.
He's still active?
Yes.
That rules out Ryan Fitzpatrick, which would have been a safe guess. Jeff Garcia would have been a safe guess.
This quarterback that started in place of Baker Mayfield is still in the league. He is a free agent. He started games last season.
So you said he started his career and was off to a good start and then had an unfortunate accident?
No, he was with a team and he was the starter for that season.
Okay.
This team had taken a quarterback in the draft prior to the season, so that April, and he was sitting behind this veteran, learning from him.
Right.
Was thrusted into the starting lineup because of an unfortunate accident with this quarterback who started week 1 for the Cleveland Browns in 2018.
Okay, I'm confused by that hint as to who the accident involved. But, all right, so go ahead and hit me on who the guy was that started.
Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, I would not have guessed that in 1,000 years. What was
so the accident that Tyrod Taylor had is he got, he was getting treatment and got his lung, or I think it was his lung punctured by a needle. and therefore he could not start for the Chargers, and Justin Herbert was thrusted into the starting position against the Kansas City Chiefs, I think. But Justin Herbert was the guy who replaced Tyrod Taylor, comes in, lights it up as a rookie, and everything has happened since.
Tyrod Taylor, I have no recollection of him in Cleveland, to be honest with you, but he's kind of been.
But you don't remember Tyrod Taylor coming in off the bench against the Colts like 3 years ago in that game where it was like 46-43?
There are so many players that you could put in that category.
Michael Pittman Jr., I remember, had a huge touchdown in that game for
Billy
the Colts.
Volek.
That was the debut of the Indiana Knights uniforms.
Oh, yeah, there we go. That was an outstanding trivia question you came up with, though.
Thank you.
I mean, not a bad trivia question at all.
Yeah, we had 2 people get it right. The first person to correctly guess was Riley.
What were the other common answers?
So I know who tried to Google to get the answer, because if you Google it, it will say that it was Carson Palmer, which is incorrect.
Was he not a week 1 starter, or it's just been done since then?
It has been done since then. Jamarcus Russell, Alex Smith, Wes was the other person who got the question right with Baker Mayfield. Ryan Leaf was another.
I remember vividly. And anybody that remembers this and doesn't confess to it is lying. I remember the preseason game of 98 when Ryan Leaf and the Chargers came into the Dome to go against Peyton Manning and the Colts. And I remember Ryan Leaf at one point had like a quarterback draw or a quarterback sneak and scored a touchdown. And like very demonstratively, is that the right word? Spiked the football in the end zone, emphatically spiked the football. And the vast majority of people sitting around were like, man, we took the wrong guy. Took the wrong guy. Should have gone with Ryan Leaf. He was really good in the first, really until things got real. And then when he got pulled at some point. There was some sort of a reason why he did not finish a game. And there was a print writer from San Diego that kind of looked like Terry Hutchins that went up and was talking to Ryan Leaf. And that's when Leaf jumped up and got in his face and yelled at him and told him to knock it off and kind of made a big scene. And that truthfully was the beginning of the end. And then it did not take long before it was like, man, this guy is just not equipped and ready for that position and ready to be a starter in the NFL. He just looked like he could not mentally handle it.
Jordan Schultz, Jake, NFL insider, used to be with CBS Sports. He now does his own kind of thing. We had him on the show once. Maybe try to get him on here in the coming days, now that I think of this. He, with an update less than a minute ago, the Colts and Daniel Jones have made progress on a long-term deal, but have not finalized anything yet.
Progress on a long-term deal. And again, we mentioned yesterday, and so now I'm prepared to say we will extend it by one more day, that by the time we do the crossover tomorrow with JMV, I think there will be a deal in place. But John has arrived. The crossover brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com. John, what's on the big program?
I'm dressing like James Spader today. Did you notice that? Blaine, we're all a little bit sick and tired of the Mr. Wonderful ads right here.
You got on
Blaine.
Got the jeans, the leather belt, and the polo shirt ready to rock and roll, right?
Laney has a choir concert, and I'm going to roll by dressed as James Spader.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
The cool James Spader we love, not the one we knew here most recently, but the one that was, one of the 80s a-holes, if you will. And I love it.
You definitely have to clarify.
You do. Question. Yeah, you got different ones.
What's on the big show?
We'll do Spiro Ditas. He's going to do the NCAA tournament. Does obviously TNT. Does NBA. We'll do that. Talk a little football with Spiro. I've got Mike DeCourcy. We'll talk bracketology, Big Ten tournament, and Greg's going to join us with a lot of other stuff too. Going to get real, right, for a lot of teams. And this is one of the worst college basketball seasons in terms of Indiana teams we have seen.
It's rough.
Is it not?
It's rough.
And nothing against Purdue. You're still probably going to be a 3 seed, but it's still a massive disappointment.
It wouldn't surprise me if Purdue's a 4 now, right?
That'd be something.
I mean, you lose 5 home games. They got some impressive wins, but But it's just also at the same time, you're hard pressed. Just for example, John, I was saying earlier, I mean, Florida might end up being a 1 seed, and I don't know about you, but you hardly hear about Florida all year
because they weren't very good at the beginning of the year.
This is the time of year where Florida every year, all of a sudden, you're like, wait, they're doing what?
Is that 7'12" guy going to get off the bench for them? Oscar Rowe, is that his name? Olivier Rowe or whatever?
No, it's Oliver, isn't it?
Does he go by Olivier?
I don't know, but he honestly is.
Yeah.
What is he? 7'11", 7'10"?
He's pretty. Yeah. He doesn't have to jump to dunk it. That's for sure.
He
looks like us on a Nerf
It's
hoop.
amazing because he's played a total of 3 minutes all year.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem like if nothing else, you could just put him in for an out-of-bound play?
It's all cool right now, but one of these days here relatively soon, he's not going to be able to move around.
I know.
That's what's sad about that.
I know.
Because he is that stinking big. Hey, by the way, number 40 on this date back in 1981. You might be surprised. Very popular album, honestly. Maybe the most popular of the decade of the 1980s. And it came after a not-so-subtle change in lead singers.
Okay, so that's got to be one of two bands, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know.
I mean, they're 81.
It's not Joy Division.
What's that?
Joy Division had a change in lead singer, too, and then they transitioned to
I'm
New
going with
Order.
Genesis.
It is not Genesis.
Okay. It wouldn't be Van Halen, obviously.
It would not be Van Halen. It would be AC/DC.
Okay, yeah.
AC/DC's Back in Black, title track. Number 40. I never knew that it hit the top 40. Number 40 on this date in 1981.
1981.
Yeah, 1981.
Yeah. Number 4, I would have thought it would be higher than that. But
I didn't think it ever hit.
It is funny, though, some of the bands that you look at, and you're surprised to know their highest charting single. Was it the highest charting single for Kiss, Beth?
Yes, easily. Unless it was something from the 80s, and I'm pretty sure it was probably Beth from the 1970s. I know you got a break right here, but one final thing as well. Back in Black, the most popular album of the 1980s, right? Is it?
Thriller?
I think if you put into
Synchronicity?
terms of how much is still played today, that it would be
sure.
hard. It'd be hard pressed to
Be way up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, there were a lot of great ones, weren't there?
There were. Back in Black, man, everybody still requests that. You better go, Eddie's going to get all hot under the collar.
Right. John's up next. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.